I was about to say, if Dave's not here,
When we know things won't fall apart.
All right, it is 6:30 and I'm calling this meeting to order. Let's stand for the pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. All right, first up is roll call.
Mayor Bachman,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Knudsen,
Here.
Trustee Smith,
Here.
Trustee Valentine, Trustee Stelter,
Here.
Trustee McKennis,
here.
Trustee Schwartz. Here. We have a quorum.
Okay, I would like to say that Trustee Valentine has COVID, so he will not be joining us. He sends his regrets. All right, next on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. Can I get a motion, please?
I move to approve tonight's agenda.
Second?
I'm reluctantly second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Next, let's move on to announcements. There are 4 announcements in the packet themselves. Judging for best Christmas decoration began on December 8th. The judge's plan is to have a winner selected for the first meeting in January. Would you like to share who the judges are, Town Administrator Wynn?
I sure will. So judges this year are myself and my family, Chief and his family, and Ruben and his family. So we're going to have some pretty good scores, and
That's like herding cats, isn't it?
you know what we're gonna do. I don't know if we're gonna do it together or individually, but it should be interesting.
So if we see a caravan driving around town, flash your lights, people. All right. Second, candidate packets for the April 2nd, 2024 municipal elections. Ms. Vetter, are they out and ready?
They will be ready to be picked up on January 2nd, I believe it was, and I put the date in there. That is the deadline for candidates to have their signed petitions back to me. So since that's coming right on the heels of the holiday, at least everybody can plan now for getting in there and serving their community.
All right. Third is the tree board is accepting applications, a letter of interest for 2 open seats. They will be decided in January as well. And the zoning board of appeals and adjustments is accepting applications and letter of interest for 1 open seat. And that, if we get any, we will look at them in January as well. And Trustee Knudsen has an announcement.
Yeah, we have been awarded the Safe Routes to Parks grant in cooperation with the Conservation Center and Nature Connection. And so that's going to give us technical assistance and helping us get safer routes, especially Apple Valley Park, the River Park, those things. Second announcement is if you're into dark skies, this is the Gemini meteor shower this week and 14th and 15th. The best nights to see it. So for those of you that like me that suffer insomnia and wake up at midnight, that's a good time to look for, as long as we don't have clouds.
Yeah.
That's it.
All right. Yeah.
Can you tell me how much the grant is for?
The grant is for technical assistance in determining safe routes to parks.
Okay, an amount of money.
$10,000.
Thank you.
And some of it might be able to be used for. So we wanted like best practices and how to get, crosswalks and lining out areas and signage and all that stuff. So, yeah.
Okay. All right. Next up, any further announcements from anyone? Okay. Next up is public comment. This members of the public can address the board on anything that is not under actions and presentations on the agenda. And there's a 3-minute time limit. Would anyone like to address the board? Yeah. Please state your name and address and then write it down on the little sheet so that we can get it correct in minutes.
Marlene Nierenberger, Lamborn Mesa Road. Graffiti is coming back to the park. I saw it there yesterday. Thank you.
Anyone else like to address the board? Yes.
Hi, my name is Shauna Lynn. I stopped into the town office the other day and was told I should come here and just make my request here. I've lived in the same house on Peony Avenue for about 25 years. And several years ago, I requested like signage, speed limits, because people fly up and down that road because it goes out Minnesota Creek. And I think it's supposed to be 25 miles an hour. There is a speed limit sign like coming into town, right there before you get to the care center, that says 25 miles an hour. And then there's another one that says, please reduce your speed. But there's not a sign going out. And I noticed, so I live on the south side of the street. I'm the only driveway on that side of the road. And it's right after the Y there where it kind of splits to go out Minnesota Creek. And it seems like as soon as people reach that Y, they gun it. And that street is heavily trafficked with pedestrians as well as cyclists. And I'm always worried that somebody's going to get hurt, and there are no sidewalks. So I just was wondering if we could put a speed limit sign like going out.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Would anyone else like to address the board? Okay, would anyone on Zoom like to address the board? Is that, okay, all right, next up is the consent agenda. Can I get a motion to accept the consent agenda?
I move to accept the consent agenda.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that motion passes. Next up is staff report. Town administrator.
Okay, so as you see, depending on what is approved or edited during this meeting, will have a bearing on what my report will look like. So I'm telling everyone I'm going to do a newsletter type report that I'll have out before the Christmas break that we have, the holiday coming up. So by 12/22, I'll have something out. It's a focus on what 24 will look like. So again, everything in this packet had a lot of staff input, and I took a lot of time to write my transmittal letter for the budget as well as the budget narrative. So that's kind of where my December went.
All right,
But we do
all right, let's move on to Chief Laminger.
Yeah, a couple of things, and I'll make them brief. At the request of the board, we did compare the judges' salaries. It is in line with other municipalities. Some of the information we have is back to 2020, but given the frequency with which we started using the judge, it does seem to be in line. 2021, we had 8 cases in front of her. 22 was 7. And this year already we have 19. So we've increased that. We are making use of that resource. I'll have other statistics and points to note, probably in the January meeting for 2023, kind of a year-end summary for that. Another thing, and I had this on a previous briefing, but we didn't really get to it. The CDOT cameras on 133 over McClure are not working right now. So we're fielding a lot of phone calls from people wanting to know those road conditions. I'm not sure if those cameras are going to get replaced, but if you call in, we'll give you the most up-to-date information that we have. We'll be happy to help you out and share that information. That's all I have on that.
Okay, any questions for the chief? All right, then moving on. We're going to go to item number 1.
Trustee McKinnison.
I have a general question about the agenda. Am I misremembering that the traffic what's the word? Schedule, was that on this agenda at some point and it was taken out? When are, oh.
It's on this
It's
agenda.
on this agenda.
Okay, never mind, I guess I'm just not seeing it. Thanks.
I think it's, is it? This is a very long agenda.
Oh, there it is, thanks.
Yeah, it's there. Okay. Item number 1 is the public hearing on consideration of granting retail marijuana license, Northport Curators LLC DBA Jimmy's Joint at 119 Grand Avenue. So this is a public hearing, and so we have a slightly different protocol. So I'm going to open the hearing. As I stated, this is on the marijuana license, granting of a retail marijuana license. First up is the staff presentation, so Mr. Wynn, or someone from the staff?
Okay. So this is, obviously, this is the third and final marijuana license that we have available for town. The criteria for meeting all of the documentation on the local side of things has been met by this applicant. I believe that in front of all of the public notices have been displayed. They have been put on the actual building that will become, that retail marijuana establishment. There were some questions that were floating around based on, what happens for that 60 days should a conditional approval be given. As our code states, once final approval is given, they have to be in operation and use that license as intended. Because it's a conditional approval, or if it is conditionally approved tonight, it would be after the satisfaction of all of those conditions that 60-day clock starts. I believe they've paid their fees. They have paid their fees and have received feedback from the state. What's that?
The state is mostly waiting on us right now.
State is waiting on us. So that's the intent of this public hearing, but they have met all of their criteria. They have produced a site plan. They do have some building drawings in for some renovations inside that haven't been approved yet, but they're on their way. And then also they've produced the security plan that is obviously been redacted from this agenda packet for obvious reasons.
Okay. Next up is applicant presentation.
Hi, I'm Susie Caldas.
And I'm Jimmy Lowe, her husband.
My husband. I've lived here for almost 13 years and Jimmy's been here for about 15 or 16.
But in Western Colorado since '88, so my whole adult life.
We purchased the High Country News building in December. And since then, we've occupied the main 4,000 square foot building with artists and entrepreneurs, as well as High Country News. And then we have a little, almost 800 square foot brick building adjacent to the 4,000 square foot building that we decided when we heard MJ's license, or when we heard MJ's close, we said, well, this would make a great retail dispensary. So I started looking at all the requirements, and we went through the whole process of having our background checks and creating an LLC and doing a DBA and speaking with the state and getting some advisement on the application process. And the state's been really great. It took a couple of months for me and my brother actually to pass the background check. And they did a forensic financial background check as well. So we had to provide the financials to show that we do have the resources to open this establishment. And
Jimmy is gonna be our general manager. He has his bud tending license. And we've been working with point of sale outfits to determine what will be the best point of sale for us. And we've met with a security person who has done a lot of security on the Front Range. It was kind of hard to find someone on the western slope.
That it dealt with the med,
Right.
you know, to their standards of what is needed from night vision, pixels, everything.
We have a sales tax license that is retroactive to January. We are shooting for a spring opening because like Mr. Wynn said, we do have some renovations to do and we've passed planning and zoning. And our architect is working on some of the final plans right now to then submit to Mr. Reardon. So we love Paonia. Paonia is our home. We don't plan on going anywhere. We have a small farm that borders the town of Paonia. We would be the first property incorporated into the town should you expand. We love it here. We feel like we do a good job running this business. I have a track record in town of starting the Paonia Creative District and working with the Creative Coalition for the last 12 years. I also did a renovation on the bookstore building. I do a lot of marketing and graphic design locally. And I have a long list of over 40 or 50 local clients I've worked with over the years. Jimmy knows the marijuana business well. We have good friends that have dispensaries in different parts of the state. We also have connections with where we will purchase our wholesale products. And I
One
feel,
on that note, you know, for me, I'm trying as hard as possible to keep as much of our product in Western Colorado and not just out of Denver where all the, you know, big corporation things that are doing things which I don't agree with all the standards and whatnot on that. So, you know, keeping it in Western Colorado is the most important thing. I feel it's important, you know, that at least one of these licenses is locally owned and operated, you know, and that's really important to me, and creating jobs locally is super important.
yeah, we already sort of have a waiting list of people that would want to work with us, and we really want to keep it family oriented. And knowing the revenues that are currently being made with the other two dispensaries, we do feel like they can share a piece of that pie and not be overburdened by losing revenue themselves.
Okay, thank you.
Should I sign this?
Yeah, please. So next up is questions from staff and applicants. So, any questions from the board? Yeah,
I just had a question that I noticed that, I don't know if anyone has brought it up to you, but I think your sign is too large. This, the square footage is more than the ordinance allows.
No, we haven't actually gone through the ordinance, and we're happy to adjust to the ordinance.
Thank you.
Mayor, if I may, so that would be one of the conditional approvals that you would give tonight is that would follow our sign code ordinance, which would be 3 by 3, 3 foot by 3 foot.
And I did like 42.
Yeah, you 4 foot by 4 foot, yeah.
Perfect.
Okay, any other questions? Yes.
I'm somewhat confused by the entrance. Is it gonna be on the side of the building, not on the street side? Where is that?
We would like to keep the entrance on the side. We have plans to cut off that driveway to automobiles. I've talked to Ira Houseward about building us some stanchions.
To make
So
that more of a walk
we'd
through.
like it to be more of a courtyard between the two buildings. There is no official easement. And I don't know if there's much pushback on that needing to be used. I feel like that driveway is dangerous to pedestrians just walking in general. Because it is kind of blind coming out, and so that would be our preference would be to keep the door on the side and but of course we will move it to the front if it's legally not allowed.
Just my thinking on that is discrete entrances, like you also had a parking lot in the back, so people side also.
Yeah, we have
Limited.
It's the.
but we have it laid out. I think we can fit 4 cars parallel to the building, and then for the other building, we can fit another 4 cars. Should the town want to not have that be a driveway anymore, we would gain more parking in the front as well. And we'd be totally open to that.
Sure, yeah.
I was curious on law enforcement end, how that works, like some of the other shops that we have, it's pretty obvious from the street that you're entering in there. Is there a problem with a discrete entrance on the side in any way?
No, from our perspective, that wouldn't really be a concern, and we actually like the approach of increasing the parking spaces there and improving our pedestrian safety all through there, especially since we have some mixed use in there, that's very busy in town.
That driveway also, since we've owned it, and I've been doing work there, there's a lot of people that kind of cruise through there kind of fast. And like I said, I mean, every time I pull out, you're completely blind to both sides, and I mean, I just barely creep trying to look forward, but when you're in a big F-250, you can't always get that far forward.
And I would also say that we have a lighting plan, it's gonna be lit up. It's not gonna be dark and kind of feel like.
Well, we have to keep it lit, plus the cameras we have to have all around the back, the front.
Tell me to wrap it up.
So that brings up another question.
Trustee Knudsen.
Well, dark sky compliance with your outside lighting.
Oh, yeah, we love the dark skies.
Well, when you said lit up, I started thinking, oh now,
Motion
I can't see the
sensors.
meteor shower.
No, of course not.
It's more to be safe and have people feel safe.
Okay.
I mean, I don't.
But pedestrian lighting kind of stuff.
Yeah, I don't wanna, you having a huge beam going up.
Las Vegas.
I don't think anybody would like that or find it discreet.
Mayor, if I can, so
Yes, please.
when the applicants do come forward with a building permit, that will be reviewed for zoning and code compliance. And so any light fixtures that they are presenting will have to go through our dark sky compliance.
All right, any other questions for staff or? All right, next is public comment. So rules for public comment, 3 minutes per speaker. Speaker shall come forward to the podium and of course, state your name and address and write it on the little piece of paper there. If no repetitious comments and no public demonstrations. Would anyone like to comment?
I didn't hear your last sentence.
Oh, no public demonstrations? Okay. Would anyone like to comment? Yes, Mr. Keenan?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think that you can't find a better couple to represent marijuana in the North Fork Valley than Susie and Jim. And let's remember that they're replacing a dispensary that left in the middle of the night with no warning to the landlords, owing a lot of money, and they were out of county people. They weren't from Delta County. So, and they left 2 couples who were doing a lot of really nice renovation on the main street. That building's still up for rent. So I think the local, we should try to do as local as possible. And, my claim to fame in the marijuana business is that I am, the name Bill Maher, the comedian. We grew up together and he smoked his very first joint with me. And he bought his first bag of weed from me and I taught him the marijuana business. And he always credits the marijuana business for creating a bankroll for himself. They gave him the confidence to go to Los Angeles and Las Vegas and try out being a comedian. We have a town site named Mar, past Crawford. No one, when you're going on the way out to Black Hills Park, you see the town site of Mar. 30 years ago, there was a post office there, the Mar Post Office. We should get Bill Maher to do a big fundraiser for the ballot someday. But yeah, I think it's a fantastic idea and I would totally support it. And I think the more local we can go with the county, as far as bucking the state a little bit and declaring that we want to grow the best marijuana in the United States in Delta County. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. King. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Prima Mary. I live at 110 Clark Avenue, and I'm in full support of Jimmy and Susie opening Jimmy's Joint. I think they're incredible community members since I've been here, always volunteering and helpful. I think they're going to run a fine establishment. So I hope you vote yes on this because I think it'll be an asset and there'll be more jobs available and that'll be great.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yep.
Arlene Nierenberger, Lambourne Mesa Road. I question whether 3 dispensaries are too much for the town. As time goes on, there's more and more studies coming out saying that marijuana is not as harmless as people assume it is. Long-term use can worsen schizophrenia symptoms, and it has connections to other mental health problems like depression, anxiety, and suicidal thoughts. Colorado already is one of the leading states for suicide. Car accidents, marijuana driving deaths since marijuana has been legalized went from 47 in 2013 to 115 in 2016. That's an increase of 145%. And things get worse mentally when alcohol is combined with marijuana. And I looked at the government site yesterday and there's 28 liquor licenses in the Paonia zip code. So I wonder how many people are combining alcohol and marijuana. And then there's the family and social impacts with the mood changes. My dad didn't have marijuana, but he had alcohol, and mood changes can have extreme effects on the family. There's often a scapegoat in the family when a family is dysfunctional. My brother is 76, and I think he still hasn't got over his childhood. My dad could be a good dad when he wasn't drinking, but he would pick up and throw things when he was drunk, and he would abuse my mom verbally. My first memory of my dad is he threatened to put my mother up on the roof. As a little kid, you don't know you can do that, but that's how extreme some mood changes can be. And I remember one patient as an EMT who was quite uncontrollable in the back of the ambulance. She was on mushrooms rather than marijuana, but that's what happens with mood effects. There's so much talk about water conservation and drought, and I understand that marijuana is a very water-intense crop. I think people don't realize that there's reports that the strength of marijuana over decades has increased by as much as 300% in some strains. I guess that's it. Thank you.
Anyone else? Yeah. All right. I'm sorry. The woman in the back stood before you. Speak get you somewhere.
Hi, I'm Patty Keats, and I want to.
Please write your name, okay, name.
Oh, I gotta
address,
write
and
it on
down.
there?
Yeah.
Okay. I never speak. And I'm here to support Susie and Jimmy for Jimmy's Joint. I think they're excellent business people and community members. And I do appreciate the last speaker's concern, but I mean, it's legal in Colorado, as is alcohol. I come from a similar background as she does, and I don't think we're here to regulate an industry. And if somebody wants to have a business that's legal in the state, I don't see why we should keep them from opening up their doors. God knows the town needs tax revenue and a viable business, and I think this could be that.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I'm Robin Kaminsky. I live at 504 Box Elder. I run the Nest across the street, and I've known Susie and Jimmy for like 20, 25 years, so they're good business people and they're good people, and it's gonna bring money to our town for infrastructure. It would be the only dispensary in the town that was owned by locals. So I think that would be good, so I'm all for it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Okay. With public hearing, our public comments over, I'm going to go ahead and close this hearing. All right, so now, trustees get to deliberate. Comments?
I'll just say that the questions that I had proposed earlier, I think yesterday, were all answered. And I understand now that this would be a conditional approval and the 60-day clock doesn't start ticking until the license is actually issued. And I was concerned about what kind of building permit was needed, et cetera, and the bond that's needed, the tax bond. I just didn't know if all that had to get done in 60 days. So I was assured that it has to do with the license being issued by the clerk starts that clock. And I'll just add, the reason I was concerned is because our code says that if the door isn't open within 60 days, the proponents forfeit that license and they lose their $5,000. So that was the reason I was concerned about what all the progression of topics were. So it's all been answered for me, so I'm in favor.
Okay. Any other comment? Yeah, Trustee
I
Knudsen.
think I just want to clarify the 60-day purpose of that. When we originally passed the code for marijuana licenses, we were concerned about someone swooping in and buying a license and just sitting on it for a long period of time. So that's why we required the 60-day period.
Okay, if there's no other comments, then somebody like to make a motion?
Sure, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the conditionally approve the application for marijuana.
Yes.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All right, that motion passes. Congratulations. All right, next up on the agenda is item 2, consideration of approval for the town to sign a letter of support for the WSCC or for WSCC on the Thompson Divide withdrawal. Is there anyone here from the, oh, very good.
Hiding.
And you're walking on 2 legs.
Crutches away. Choice between. Thank you. My name is Ralph Alessandro. I represent the Western Slopes Conservation Center for Poplar. And we're requesting a letter of support to follow up the letter that the town council gave in January of this year for withdrawal of the 220,000 acres in the Thompson Divide area. Ask your support to follow along with the current letter of support that's been drafted and provided in your packet, as I understand, along the same logic and sign that we put in the original letter. Water and the watershed
is impacted here by what happens up in the Thompson Divide. And this Thompson Divide withdrawal would protect part of the West Elk Scenic Byway, areas that are nearby that are used for recreation and hunting and generate economic benefit for Ionia, including the Lost Lake Campground and the Old Joyful Recreation Area. So I ask you to consider this and give support to permanent acceptance of what was an environmental assessment report that just issued by the BLM last Friday. And this would, if approved in its final form, would go forward, not requiring a NEPA analysis. Any questions?
Before we do that, I'm going to take comment from the public.
Would you like me to log in here too?
Please. Does anyone from the public want to comment? All right, seeing that. Question from the board.
Okay. Well, I have a question. When's the deadline for us to have the letter in?
It's the first week of January. By my calculations, they issued the EA on December 8th. There's a 30-day period. So I think January 7th would be the deadline.
Yes, Tracy.
Individuals can comment also.
Yes, we
So,
encourage all of you to write comments.
Well, that's more for the purpose of the public. So anyone else that's individually interested in making sure that this happens, this would be a good time to write a letter of support or withdrawal.
Thank you.
Okay. No other comments or questions, and I would entertain a motion.
I make a motion to forward the letter that we have on our packet, or something very similar to the Mr. said, and approve this concept.
A second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that motion passed.
Thank you very much.
All right, next up is item 3, consideration of approval of signing a letter of support to the Colorado Economic Enterprise Zone Contribution Project for Solar Energy International presentation. Do you have anyone from SEI? Yes.
It may not have been able to get somebody, or they had some things come up. I know they were gonna try, but unless somebody's popped in that I don't know, they just were prevented from coming here. So the letter may be.
I am on their board.
I was gonna say. Trustee Schwartz can possibly speak.
Yeah, so we're basically, this is a benefit to SEI, especially for tax purposes, for individuals. I think this is correct for making donations. It's fairly straightforward. And you all know what SEI brings to the community. And so we're hoping that this is just a straightforward request and that we can move forward with the letter of support. I don't think anything more needs to be said.
Okay. Comments from the public? All right, seeing none. Questions from the board? Yes.
I just have an editorial change I'd like to see on the second line. It says as Paonia Town Administrators, we are well aware, if that could be modified to reflect, I'm assuming, is this to reflect the entire board and then signed by the mayor?
This was not my draft. It was provided to me, but yeah.
But that, if that could be modified, I believe we got a letter in our email today. Is it identical to this one?
I believe it is.
Okay.
It is.
Thank you.
Trustee McGinnis.
Well, I think my question is just out of curiosity as far as a little bit of background about the easy contribution tax credit, but I think I can find that out on my own. Yeah, I mean, I'm anything that we can do to support SCI. I'm happy.
Yes, that was my question too. I understand the easy zone and that whole concept, but I hadn't heard of a contribution project. And heard of a contribution project, so I will go investigate that. All right. So if there's no other comments, can I get a motion, please?
I'll make a motion. I would make a motion that we approve the signing of letter of support to the Colorado Economic Enterprise Zone Contribution Project for Solar Energy International with a modification, a minor editorial modification.
Okay, have a second.
I second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that motion passes. All right, item number 4, we're back to a public hearing again. All right. So I'm gonna open the hearing. So this is consideration of approval of a budget amendment for fiscal year 2023. Staff presentation goes to Town Administrator Wynn.
Okay, so you'll notice that, there we go, that these worksheets look very similar to the budget. It's because they were the same worksheet, I just plugged in different numbers. So this is an actual budget to actual. What was the reason for this budget amendment is twofold. Number one, in the general fund, we saw less revenue than what we anticipated and what was budgeted for in 2023. Our expenditures are, what is our budgeted expenditures are fine, and they'll carry us through to the end of the year. It's the revenue that was less than expected. And I will say that these numbers are actual as of December 8th. So what that means is we still should see our monthly deposits of sales tax revenue and things from the state and the county that will be broken out and booked. But in an abundance of caution, to make sure that we're still going to be able to balance and pay for what we need to for the end of the year, I'm proposing a budget amendment of up to $200,000 from the general fund reserves to help us finish out the year. Now, what happens if we don't use that? That it becomes unappropriated, unrestricted funds and goes back into the reserve. So we can use it in future years. But this is a cautionary approach to make sure that we are in compliance with state and local laws for a good budget. The other item, and so I put every department to show where everybody's at, so that you can see what was budgeted and what was actual. The really rough one is my department. And part of that was a lot of the engineering fees came out of administration instead of being broken up amongst departments. And then one of the interim town administrator's contract came out of this department as well. And so all of those things equated to a much larger than anticipated expenditures for the administration department. Law enforcement, in the first time in my career, is over $100,000 under budget, which is really good for them. So, like I said, first time in my career that's happened. So good job. So they do have some purchases that they're trying to make by the end of the year that will keep them still within their budget. You'll see that the next really big one, water is really healthy, which we're going to need to be able to apply for and receive state revolving fund loans for drinking water next year that our entire fiscal year 24 budget is predicated on, and our capital improvement plan. So we will need this net income of $241,000. It has to go towards these capital improvement projects for next year. But the really big one that was unexpected, and by the way, sanitation, actually healthy. So budget to actual, it looks like it's going to have a surplus. So what was budgeted was a deficit of 88 cents. Actual is closer to $42,000 in the black. So with our wastewater account, that's where we come into a little bit of an issue, right? We had 3 emergency sewer repairs. There was Main, which was the most recent one on Grand Avenue, and then one in an alleyway behind Grand. In addition to a budgeted capital improvement for Doris Avenue. So this one is significantly over budget. It will require not only a budget amendment for expenditures to double expected expenditures, but also to pull out of reserve for the wastewater fund. And so that's all enumerated in that resolution. to be as transparent as possible, even though it's not really necessary for enterprise funds to show where you're pulling money from. We put that in there to be transparent. So we have it, we just need to budget for it.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
In an unrelated but related, we did hear from our auditors today that they are working very hard on the fiscal year 22 audit. And I'm really hopeful that we will have a special meeting before the end of the year to accept an audit. So.
All right, questions for the administrator? Yeah, trustee Christie.
I know that some of the reserves that we have, especially in utility reserves, are required for loan. And I want to make sure that our overage in wastewater doesn't impact those.
We should be okay. And I say that because our Colorado Trust Fund is where we're holding those wastewater funds that are required for like, I think it was a bond that we had taken out, so our debt service. We're still going to meet those requirements and they're still drawing really, really good interest.
Question, yeah, trustee.
Mine is just a comment. I just want to say thank you for answering my comment via email and giving clarification. That really helped me understand this better. So much appreciated.
Trustee Travis.
Yeah, I think my only question is, what we're seeing is kind of a deficit in, or drawing in less money than we had expected, and I'm curious about, is an expectation of that either changing or not reflected in next year's budget, so we're not kind of swimming in the same water next year, or?
Yeah, so what I based our budget on in fiscal year 24 is actual revenue coming in. And so it wasn't something that I looked at what we actually were booking and forecasted off of that.
Okay.
And we also are receiving and have actually signed contracts for lots of grant funding. And so we know we're going to get that funding. That's what that budget's predicated on.
Anyone else? Yeah.
Can I just have a comment?
Oh my God.
Okay, this to me just really states to the importance of planning ahead, because we know how expensive these emergency repairs are, that it can literally break the bank, not break the bank, but cost so much. So I really appreciate the foresight that went into the 2024 budget so that we can get out of this emergency mode.
Okay. All right. I'm going to open it for public comment. Again, 3-minute max. Is there anyone from the public who would like to comment? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to close the hearing. All right, trustees, I would like to make a motion or ask one question.
I can read.
Dave!
I move to approve resolution 18-2023, resolution amending 2023 budget for the town of Paonia.
We have a second.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that motion passes. All right, next up is item 5, consideration of approval for resolution 2023 water rate and changes.
Okay, so I've been, by the way, this is the one that I've dreaded for a month and a half, this exact agenda item right here. But I brought this up for the last few months, just about every meeting that I could, a departmental scorecard, to say that in order for us to balance our fiscal year 24 budget, in order for us to move forward with the serious infrastructure projects that we need for phase 3, water improvements, of our water improvement plan, it will require us to raise our water rates incrementally over 20 years. And so, and all of this is predicated on whether or not we get principal loan forgiveness. But as a stipulation of applying for funding, and then later on applying for principal loan forgiveness, you have to raise your rates. And so that's where we're at. That's why I've proposed a series of rate increases over the next 5 years. In 5 years' time, once we start paying that principal and that interest back, and we apply for principal loan forgiveness, if we get it, we can come back and adjust these, what our plan is for keeping our revenue moving forward. So that being said, we are looking at 5 years worth of rate increases, and here's the schedule. You'll see that instead of going to some astronomical number, we're keeping it relatively easier to pallet over the next 5 years. So we're looking at a base rate in-town residential increase to $43.24, $44 and $25, that's $45.32 in 2026, and so on. And so you can see that it's broken down by in-town residential, out-of-town residential, in-town commercial, and out-of-town commercial users. We've also increased the number or the amount for water usage. So that was base rate. This is also for water usage moving forward. And again, incremental steps. When we did our presentation for our EIAF grant, where we were awarded $965,000, we were notified. There were other communities who are raising their rates by almost 200% over 20 years. And so we're not, the higher you go in your usage, though, we are trying to do that water conservation thing that we have to do in Colorado to drive down consumption. So anything over 25,000 gallons did see larger increases for their water use. But other than that, we tried to be as reasonable as possible. A requirement of the state revolving fund or the drinking water revolving fund is that we keep a 1 to 1.1 expenditures to revenues. So if we're going to spend one, we have to bring in 10% more of revenue in order to even qualify for those loans. And so I did put together that 20-year cash flow analysis that went along with our project needs assessment, that goes along with our capital improvement plan. And it does show that we, by going with this structure, we will meet that 1 to 1.1. That's all I got.
Okay. We're gonna open up for public comment. Would anyone like to comment? Yeah, Mr. King.
Madam Mayor, this could be a few sentences about water in general.
Okay, please. Name, address, sign in. Thank you.
Well, I would just like to take this opportunity to say that I think that we should have a big public open discussion about these and some real elegant, adequate approach the some of the representatives, both current and former, especially former, going way back, and take some due diligence. But of the representatives of the coal mine companies, and get them to give us as a gift. And this might sound a little off the wall, but I do think this is the way we should approach it. Have the coal companies give us those 300 water taps or whatever they are as a gift, and I think that's doable. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to make a comment? Any comments on Zoom? Sam? Okay. Questions, comments from the board?
Couple things.
Trustee Knudsen.
One of the citizens that was here that doesn't have good health caught me on the way into the meeting discussing the dilemma he has with standby tap fees. And I'm curious, what is with this new increase that we're proposing? If someone has a standby tap fee, what is their current tap fee and what will their new tap fee go to?
We didn't contemplate standby tap fees, so it doesn't look like there's any increase for a standby tap.
That would satisfy that citizen.
That's the ordinance. That's an ordinance. I'll have to look into that because we didn't contemplate a standby increase for any of the 20-year cash flow.
This citizen was under the impression that their standby fee would go from approximately $60 to $90, and you know, I just wanted to follow up, so if that's part of the record and we can follow up.
Oh, I understand. So there are two different fees. So if somebody gets a water standby tap, they also get a sewer standby tap.
Okay.
And so that's billed each month. So that could have been where that 90 was coming in.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. And then second thing is, I just want to make sure I'm reading this right. The people that are using the water hauling station, so they're paying $3 per 100. So it's $30 for 1,000 gallons.
That's correct.
Okay, great. That's reasonable. The other citizen issue, I think, is about the LEAP program. One person had mentioned that they thought they only got a $4 discount if they qualify for LEAP, and that just seemed excessively stingy. That someone that is on a fixed income that qualifies for LEAP, it seems like they should have some pretty serious forgiveness of their bills. And I'm curious, like, how many people qualify for that? And what should we do as far as alleviating somebody?
So with this increase, it's a 20% discount on their base rate. So with this increase, that's what that relief is. So for this one, for $43 for that base rate, their relief would be $8.60 a bill. And so that for the next one, again, it would be 20% off. And then you asked how many were actually.
Yeah, how many people have actually applied for that?
I can tell you. So that was part of our 20-year, that 20-year cash flow. If you give me just a second, I can pull it up. But I did contemplate how many people would be on that, on that plan. And then we also deducted that from our final amount of revenues. And then it looked like in that cash flow, it looked like we typically received about 97.28% of our expected revenues every year. And so that final number has been reduced by 2.818% or something like that, to show what would actually be our revenue. Give me 1 second, I'll pull this up.
And we looked at this
I know we did.
a year after we instituted
Right.
it, and it was not very much at all.
I know, and that's the concern I have about whether that is just too Grinch-like.
And we can change it. I mean, it's
Yeah,
an
that's what I mean.
ordinance we passed.
That's why I'm asking the number of people that are on it.
President McGinnis.
Well, yeah, and I think since we've started contemplating these rate hikes, this has been kind of what's been sticking in my side is, nothing that we do here should exist in a vacuum. And we have a housing study that tells us that we have more senior citizens in this town. That's the most represented population. And so thinking about a rate hike like this, we really have to think about what is it actually going to do on the ground for every population, right? And so I think while I agree that changing the rates is necessary, we also have to spend energy to alleviate excess pressure that these rates will eventually kind of exert on some folks. And is that, either expanding the qualifications or expanding the amount that people get back with the LEAP program? Is that looking for state grants to then help people with their utilities? I think we have options in that. But I do think that, in raising these rates, we should be spending quite a bit of energy to try and make sure that this is feasible for the people who live here.
I just want to make it clear so everyone understands that LEAP reimbursement for gas and electric comes from the state.
Yeah.
The town of Paonia is providing the money to people who qualify for LEAP out of our revenues. So there is a weighing that we have to do, because if we provide too much revenue for people on LEAP, we have to make that up somehow. So I just want people to understand it's not a state provided reimbursement program. This is the town of Paonia providing monetary relief. Thanks.
We don't have very many on it. So we're anticipating that we reduce our revenues by about 0.44% based on that utility rate relief program.
One of the things is the LEAP program is fairly stringent on how much money you can make. And I believe this year it was $16,000. So it's pretty low. That's the way it is. So, and I anticipate being one of those seniors pinched by this. So, and this next year, I'm not gonna be working much. So it's gonna be a tough time. And also LEAP, I won't be able to get because they go by last year's income.
And all the money you made for being on the council.
Yeah, all of it. It didn't even pay my water bill.
So thinking about this, I mean, the reason we went with LEAP qualifications is because it took the onus off the town to decide who was qualified and who was not. If there's another easy way that we can, that has less stringent requirements that we can use to qualify people to get a reduction, I think that would be a great way to do it. I just can't off the top of my head think of something that would work. Yes.
Well, it would certainly have to be something where somebody has a card they show you.
Exactly.
I did this for pets in Wyoming, and people who were receiving, I believe it was food stamps, we were able to give them free pet food. So I don't know, it seemed to me food stamps does have some sort of a official card that you can show someone, or a copy. They had to bring in a copy of that. And I can't remember what the other one was, but there are a couple already in the pipeline, low income services that perhaps we could look at. But again, I want us to remember,
Right.
we have to make up the difference. You know.
And so, yeah, a little bit of money for a lot of people, a lot of money for a few people.
Right.
Yeah, it's a balancing act. And yeah, I would love to support more people and to make it a whole lot easier on more people, but at the same time, we've got millions and millions of dollars in infrastructure we have to support, but I don't want people not using water because they can't afford it.
Mayor, if I can,
Yes.
so what we're talking about are two different things, right? We're talking about a resolution today about water rate increases, but we're also talking about an ordinance change for our utility bill relief program.
Right.
And so that's something that we could look at the first of next year
Yeah.
as a new ordinance that would qualify more people based on perhaps something with the assistance program for the state of Colorado. So we could contemplate that as well, but that would maybe allow more people to qualify for our base relief program. But that was set by ordinance, and so it would have to be changed by ordinance.
Yeah. Okay. Yes.
You know, I know maybe some of you have looked at Facebook comments today, and I think just for if anybody's out there listening who's on Facebook, or just if it would be good to just reiterate, what are the total cost of our 3 phases and how much we've brought into grants? So we've talked about this a lot, but just big picture.
I was thinking about doing that grant calculation today too, and I never got around to it.
So that was to give me indigestion?
Yeah.
Or that was the McDonald's cheeseburger. But this first phase alone, I'm trying to pull it up here, just so I can see.
Well, there's that circle chart, that just showed how much was grants and how much was.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to get to. It looks like, as of right now, our total water fund for phase 1 alone, phase 1 is actually made up of 3 parts, phase 1A, phase 1B, phase 1C, is, I'm trying to do this off the capital improvement plan. So give me 1 second. We're talking about $8.4 million, and that's just in next year alone. I think our total overall for all 3 phases is closer to $25 million. And then in wastewater, we also have additional capital improvement expenditures coming to the tune of $35 million for our collection system, and then our treatment facility close to $14 million. And the treatment facility really depends on state regulations and how much of the EPA that they, things coming from the EPA that they push down on local communities. I anticipate they're going to push hard, and so we will be looking at a full mechanical plant, which I will fight tooth and nail to keep our lagoon system, but ultimately state trumps on that kind of stuff. So.
The problem with the mechanical plants is coverage. That's going to require more employees and
Licensure.
4-hour coverage.
Yep.
Lots of stuff.
So we anticipate those are coming. We have to start thinking like they're coming and planning for them so that we're not caught in 4 or 5 years from now going, oh boy, we really wish we would have incrementally or did small rate increases to build up a reserve. But again, for our water, we're looking at over the next 20 years, $25 million worth of projects. So.
And grants only go so far, and this is something that I don't know that the general public understands, and that by and large, for every grant you receive, you have to match that grant with your own money. So for the $956 million or $1,000 that we got from the state for the EIF, we have to match that with our own money to be able to get that grant. So it's not like, we're just handing out free money without having to pony up stuff ourselves. So it's hard. So if there's no further discussion on this.
I just had one question and 2 comments.
Okay.
I'll do the comments first, and I know I'm a broken record on this, but I'd like this to be on the record and for folks that were on Facebook, that the water and the sewer and the trash are called enterprise funds, which means no tax money can be brought into these funds. They have to be self-funded through rates and if we can get grants and loans. So that is why these are going up, because we have to provide the capital money and have it ready to be able to get grants and loans. And my second comment is thank you for the 20-year estimation. Long overdue that we have something like that to look at. Thank you so much. And my question is, what does it take to get loan forgiveness?
So it varies. So for wastewater, I've been told it's very highly competitive. So when we get to that point, it's going to be more competitive. Water is a lot easier. It could be as simple as submitting an application and receiving it. It's not competitive yet, but as more people use that revolving fund program, it may become competitive in the future. But as of right now, it's not that competitive.
Right. And being a disadvantaged community
helps.
Huge.
Yeah,
huge for us. So being poor has its advantages. All right. Can we get a motion to accept resolution 20?
I move to approve resolution 20-2023.
All right. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All right, that motion passes. I do want one final comment. And I don't know if this is on purpose or if it's a mistake. On the rate increases for the usage, I noticed that at 1 to 1,000 gallons, in 2027, it's $3.47. 2028, it's $3.45. I was so excited to get a 2-cent break.
That is going to have to be a correction. So that's me. That was me taking from the 20-year cash flow and then trying to build my own chart into an ordinance or a resolution.
But now it's a resolution.
Yeah.
So it's set.
No.
That's okay. It's 20 years
down the line. It's only 5.
2028.
We'll fix it. Bill.
If we have to.
All right.
We might not have to.
All right. Let's move on to item 6, consideration of approval of ordinance 07-2023 sewer rates.
As I alluded to, there are some state mandates that will be coming that we have already started talking with our consulting engineers about, that we anticipate that we have an existing in-ground collection system that needs about $45 million worth of maintenance to replace everything. And then a wastewater lagoon facility that may have to become that dreaded M-word mechanical plant at 14.5 million. So we're trying to incrementally get there, at least to build up some reserves. In the fiscal year 24 budget, you'll also see that as it stands, we're looking at just being able to put away $100 at the end of the year. The good news is we're planning to purchase a jet vac trailer with funds from the wastewater utility that should help with cleaning and maintenance and reducing the amount of catastrophic emergencies like we had this year. So we're looking at doing increases. This resolution is a $2 increase a month for everyone. So we're looking at $2 a user, so $57 a month for in-town residential. In-town commercial, again, a $2 increase to $62 a month. And then out-of-town residential and commercial, this one is a $5 increase to $65 a month.
Public comment? Okay, seeing none. Questions from the board? Oh, yeah. Anybody online? Oh, okay, comments from the board? Okay, seeing none, can we get a motion?
I'd like to move to approve ordinance 07/2023.
I'm sorry. Did someone have their hand up? I'm sorry, I didn't see you were behind the podium.
Okay. I started then when I was at 215 Copper.
Yeah. Please write your name.
I can't really hear you all that well, but what I want to know is how much are our rates going to go up?
Okay.
I didn't really get it.
Are you in town?
Yes.
$2
$2
a month.
for the water and then the sewer.
Go ahead.
So for wastewater, it'll go up $2 a month. For water, that base rate goes up. Oh my goodness. Zoom in, sorry. It'll go up $3 a month. So we're talking about a $5 a month increase for base rates.
And then it's just going to keep going up and up. From what I've read in the paper, I understand that you think this is really necessary because you want to put meters on the springs. And the reason for the meters on the springs is to kind of prove that the springs can service more taps. So we better lift the water moratorium so the town can start selling taps and get some development going. And I personally, I don't want more growth and I don't want more taps sold. I'm here because I don't want to live in a high density urban environment. And so I kind of feel like I'm being charged for growth that I don't want. That's all.
Thank you. Please write your name on the little paper.
And I'm not on LEAP, and I don't want to ask the government for money. I don't want to get on LEAP and all that. And, I just don't want to do it. I'll just pay it, but it's a hardship, I'm telling you. So we're looking forward to high property tax increases. And I don't know what you're going to do on the mill levy. I didn't really get from the notice whether you're going to raise the mill levy. Okay, it didn't really make that clear on the signs on the door. Okay, I'll put my name here. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Did we get a motion?
I started to, but
Okay,
I needed citizen comments. Are we ready?
I think so.
Okay, I move to approve.
You have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that motion passes. All right, next. We're back to another public hearing. All right, I'm opening the hearing. This is a public hearing and consideration of Resolution 19, 2023, resolution setting the mill levy for 2024 and adopting the fiscal year 2024 budget. Back to you.
Okay, so this will take a little bit of time. So I do want to go through individual sections so you can see that changes were made that were requested. But this resolution shows what our expenditures are and what we have in, what we believe to be in reserves. I was really conservative in what we had in reserves because we haven't finished the fiscal year 22 audit. So most likely that number will be higher, which I've been advised by Nick is better than it being lower. So that's why we're conservative in that. So, but if I could, I just wanted to show an updated organizational chart. That's going to be in this presentation, and I'm going to switch to my laptop and go through it. I'll try to be as quick as possible. But we did update the organizational chart to be a little bit easier to understand. Mayor Pro Tem Knudsen had said, hey, the town attorney's not on there and we're missing the municipal judge. So those have been added. You can see that the municipal judge has been added under commissions, boards, advisory committees, which is an offshoot of the Board of Trustees. So this clicker does not want to work. There we go. And now we'll go to the screen share. So let's see if I can. We also have department heads here in case you guys do have just questions as we get in, dive deeper into this budget.
Would it be better for you if we ask questions as you go through sections?
Yes, please. Okay. Yeah.
We'll do that.
So I'll stop the other screen sharing. Okay. Killed it. What's that? You killed it. Did. Okay, so nice cover page, but I did like this quote. This was actually from the town administrator advertisement. It was something that was recommended by Leslie to put into that recruitment brochure, and I think that we have made that turn from political strife into a future addressing real problems. And so I thought it's pretty good for a fiscal year 24 budget. I'm going to stick that in. You can see an acknowledgements page, and I should also caveat this with, I have recently been accepted into the Government Finance Officers Association, and I do look to put this budget in for a distinguished budget award. So we'll see. I think I've met all of their elements. My letter, so my transmittal letter, I'll go over this really quick for you. This has been the culmination of significant staff time and input. I know in past years, there seemed to have been some contention with workshops. I think that we presented something that was easy for you to follow, that had input from our department heads and our different departments, and made it a lot easier to understand and to, I guess, to stomach what we're proposing. I did want to let you know that we're proposing our property tax rate, or the millage rate, to stay at 8.322 mils, as it has for a decade. And I verified that. So I went through every budget going back to 2013, and it has stayed at 8.322 mils. So we're not changing the millage rate. Now, people may see that their property tax assessment has gone up, and because that assessment has gone up at that same millage rate, you may have to pay more in property tax, but our millage rate has stayed the same. And we don't do assessments. That's done by the county. The county assessor's office tells us how much properties are worth, because we're statutory town. Our sales tax rate is staying the same. We're not making any changes. And we, by your approval to this evening, we also have a third marijuana dispensary in town where we get $5 a transaction. And it's a significant revenue generator for the town, and goes quite far for our capital improvement plans. I wanted to point this out, that this budget continues what you, as the board, started in fiscal year 2023 through investment in not only employee training, but in employee retention, and then tackling real capital improvement issues within the town. And so that's what all of this budget is based on. The general fund makes up about $3.6 million of revenue, which is included in that 24 budget, which is allocated to 5 different departments. So administration, law enforcement, Public Works Streets Division, Public Works Parks Division, and building department. So those are the 5 departments that are funded through the general fund. Unlike some departments where we are able to do some different types of fixed allocations for costs, like my salaries and the operations for administration department, the police department is wholly funded from the general fund and can only be funded from the general fund. So that's why you'll see some of their expenditures in the general fund are significantly higher. It's because they are 100% funded by the general fund. Again, the organizational chart, I did add a caveat in there about, the crucial role that residents play in this whole structure that we call town government. I did work on some history, so this is a lot of research here to get some history done. But I also included things like the North Fork Valley Creative Coalition, which is really important to our downtown area. Mayor Pro Tem.
When we come to the history, there's a part that really has concerned me in my years on the board, and it doesn't come up here. And that is in the 4th paragraph. We talk about it was first explored here. At the very end, it says, when the Ute Indian Reservation was closed by the federal government, I'd like to add verbiage to that says, and Native people who were forcibly removed in violation of a series of treaties. I don't have any objections to that, so that's an easy thing that we can do for this for the website. I just want to acknowledge true past.
Again, the NFDCC has been really important to our downtown area, and I think because they are state certified and they did receive that designation from the state, it's kind of prudent that we include that somewhere in our budget narrative and history. So that's what we've done. I did include some history about what we experienced in 2019. That really was what precipitated all of our capital improvement projects in water to make sure that things like this don't happen again. So I think that is a very important part of our recent history to include, and that's why it was included. General budgetary principles. So these are general guidelines for how municipal budget operates. And so if somebody that's trying to read this budget, layperson from one of our residents, should be able to go through this and go, okay, that this is what the town has to follow for general budgetary principles and guidelines. Our budget process, again, that's just a calendar. And as far as our narrative is concerned, I did want to put in a summary of funds. With the budgeted FTE means full-time equivalents, included if you as part of that calculation, but being an elected official, you don't have to. But sources of funds, it's almost $15 million with different grants and loans that we're taking out just to get through next year. The use of funds, we're planning to spend almost $14 million. And then I explain in the water budget why there's that disparity. It's because that 1 to 1.1 expenditures to revenues. We do have 22 full-time equivalents budgeted. That's an increase of 1 full-time employee for next year. So we are currently at 21. We're going to go to 22, which has been budgeted. And that the benefit is the Public Works Department for that 1 employee. I did include our tax rate. So this is an important part of any budget that some municipalities tend to leave out, but I think it's really important to see if you're going to live or do business in town, what are the taxes that will be imposed upon you? There's a state sales tax of 2.9%, a county sales tax of 2%, Paonia sales tax of 3%. That PSI is a public safety improvement, so that's your badge, 0.8. Delta County Health Services District, HSD, another 0.8. And then that marijuana occupational tax, $5 per transaction. It brings in probably the biggest chunk of our general fund revenue. So it's pretty nice. I did go over our town amenities, and I go in depth about water, wastewater, sanitation, and the services that we do provide, including the improvements that we're planning to do for fiscal year 24 to our raw water sources, our treatment facility, and then our finished water storage tank, and of course distribution. In wastewater, I thought it was pretty prudent to put in where we're at with collections. Again, close to $45 million worth of pipe and ground that needs to be replaced. Of that, the most egregious or old pipe that's in the ground is that vitreous clay pipe, VCP. And there's estimated to be about $3.2 million still after Doris Avenue. So we still have a significant chunk of clay pipe that's got to come out. Clay pipe can last forever. Well, useful life is what, 50 years? And the pipe that's in the ground, I think, is approaching 70 years. So it's maxed, it's reached its max useful life plus 20 years. That's why we're seeing we're actually seeing clay pipe at the plant, which is not good.
Chunks of clay pipe were coming through.
The good news is it's typically the top, so water is still flowing, because your sewer doesn't fill up the entire pipe. If it does, we've got problems. So it's not. It's typically the top of the pipe that falls in, hits the channel, and runs all the way to the plant. So it means the water's still flowing and it's not splashing out and contaminating everywhere, unless it's Doris.
Also on that, we don't know for sure that if some of these previous collapses just find.
Had stuff in it,
through,
eventually
you know what I
made
mean?
it.
So it don't necessarily mean that we do, but with the luck we've had, it's not.
Thank you, Corey, for making my white hair white.
So we, you know, what I also talk about is where we're at with treatment, what some of the regulations are for our national pollutant discharge something permit. So the NPDES permit that we get through CDPHE. Talk about streets, roadways, and sidewalks. We do have an asset management plan for sidewalks. We do have it in our capital improvement plan for next year to do sidewalks. The sidewalks that are prioritized for next year also tie into our fifth and grand realignment project, because that just makes sense. If we're going to invest in, you know, the safe pathways for Paonia, we should go outside the scope of work and do the rest, you know, that meet up on that project. So that's how that was planned and prioritized. Next year for paving, we are looking at our public parking lots to repave them and to bring them into ADA compliance, so that we have, you know, that ADA transition. So you're not going from like stone to grass to that. We're staying on hard surfaces and trying to make a ADA routes accessible and connected. Mayor Pro Tem, forgive me for this, but I put in from the Paonia motion plan some of these charts, but they are the summary of parks. That's all I put in. What parks we actually have in town that we're responsible for in some way, somewhat responsible for, including how many acres they are, and then our trail network as well. So this was a really easy chart to grab and be able to add, but I thought it was really necessary because, I mean, when you talk about how many parks that Paonia has, it's actually kind of incredible that we have, you know, most towns have maybe 2, and we have more than that. So, and lots of natural areas to go outside town.
I have more of a problem with the process.
With the process.
But their results and their recommendations were fairly sound, some of them. So mentioning family and motion.
All right. So I also included local demographics. So this is stuff that I was able to pull from our housing needs assessment to also include. I thought that Urban Rural Continuum did a really good job of capturing where we are at this point in time with Paonia. I think it was really important to add this to our budget so we can see what we're pulling from. And so while I know that there is a resistance to growth from some residents, where we're at with like trying to do some water improvements, there's one of two ways to raise revenue for utility. It's either you add more users or you increase your rates. And so that's kind of what we're forced with right now. And the nice thing is if you can balance the two with smart growth and rate increases, it helps to alleviate some of that burden on our users. Right now, we have no growth, and so unfortunately, we all have to show it around the table. We all have to show it. But I thought it was really important to see the scary thing, and I don't mean this in a bad way by any means, but we are an aging population, and so that means that we have more as our town's population ages. It means more people come on a fixed income. And so that makes it really hard for us to make some of those decisions that we need to make to balance the budget, including utility rate increases. And then we're not doing millage rate increase, but that, if that were to come down the line, I'm not saying it is. Also talk about the types of jobs in town and what the average pay is and where we stand with like the county and the state. It's not good, but it is where we're at, so. I thought it was also very prudent, the Government Finance Officers Association says it's really prudent to put in your public notice. Your notice that it shows that you've actually done what's needed to approve or consider a budget, so that's in here as well. And now we'll get to general fund revenue. So as everybody, this has been washed through multiple meetings. We were able to make significant changes as you guys have requested. And we're looking at a final adopted budget in the general fund of $3.225 million, so $3,225,518. We're looking at a net surplus or deficit of nothing. So it means we're balanced. That's what we're trying to do based on our expenditures in the general fund. I did include this new graph. So this is something that hasn't been seen in different versions, but I thought it was really important to see where our general fund revenues are by type. So we did have, if you go back to general fund revenues, you'll see like there are subsections: miscellaneous revenues, transfers, fines and forfeitures, intergovernmental revenues, taxes, and license permits and fees. So that's all made up into this graph here. Now, in miscellaneous revenues, that's typically where a municipality budgets for grants. And so I wanted to make sure that we're pulling that out so you can see what makes up that miscellaneous revenue. I think it's pretty incredible that we've already are under contract and have been approved for 32% of our general fund budget to be supplemented by grants. And, I can say that is through the efforts of the mayor with applications, and then going to just defend those applications, we received those fundings. And so you can see like, I don't put anything into a budget, and it's not a good practice to put anything into a budget that hasn't already been approved and signed for. And so that's what we've done. We waited till we had a contract for those things. Put in the estimated county sales tax. So based on $260,000, this is a conservative estimate. I do anticipate that we'll see more revenue, but I wanted to build this budget based on a forecast that I think if there were some sort of terrible thing happen in 23 and sales go way down, we're still able to operate our town. And so we anticipate that Back the Badge will make up the majority of that sales tax from the county, so about $145,000. And of course, those have requirements on what we spend that money on. breaking up, so by our code of ordinances, we're supposed to have a capital improvement fund that is funded through 1% of the 3% sales tax, or a third of all revenue brought in by town sales tax. And so that's what you see here. We've budgeted as if a third of that is going to go towards capital outlays, whatever that may be. It could be building and equipment, it could be repairs, it could be anything. General fund expenses by department, that's really important to show that we do have, where the funds are going by department. And again, this one is really skewed. It's highly unusual to have streets make up the majority of your general fund. But we received $1 million grant from CDOT, and that's going a long way in towards making that 50% of our general fund expenditure. Typically, it's PD. He gets a reprieve this year. We break down, again, showing general fund by expenses by type. That's personnel, operations, or capital outlay. You'll see that we have $1.4 million budgeted for capital outlay, which is kind of incredible for a tower size. So. Each department got their own cover sheet, and so with a mission statement, and I think I've shown this once before in a draft. We also talk about the major goals and changes, the capital requests. With this most recent freeze thaw, if you're wondering why the cones and caution tape are up, just look up at the arch and you'll see that it's further separated, meaning that we're going to have to do something relatively quickly to fix that facade. So that's why it's a capital request in the administration department. Again, breakdown by the type of expense. And I also included the capital improvement plan for each department. And so that's what these are. These are the capital improvement plans and where we're planning to pull some funds for to pay for the expenses that we're looking at. The good thing about this is that once we start a project, so let's say we start a project for purchasing the Sam's new desk, we can put that in ClearGov and click on the capital improvement plan and say start project, and it'll populate and make it transparent in the transparency tool. So that's all ready to go once we're ready to start projects.
Can I just ask a quick question here while we're on capital improvements? When we have the code rewrite, and the land use code update, at our last meeting, you had a question regarding the grant letter that we got, and did we have to increase, I think, the mill?
No, it was, did we have to put the use of that money to the vote?
Oh, yes. Did we find out the answer to that?
I did, and I got it from Nick. Let's see. I don't know if I forwarded that through the.
Nick's ready.
Oh, yes, Nick can answer.
Yeah, so did provide some advice on that, and I believe, if I understand the question correctly, we're talking about the sidewalk fee, correct?
No.
No, it was, we received grant money, and in that letter from DOLA, it had said that this could, yeah.
Okay, yeah, I understand now, and so what DOLA was talking about was actually they're putting it in as sort of a placeholder for DOLA's own protection, and what they mean is that if the town actually receives revenues over those that are estimated in any fiscal year, then that could cause the town to have to then refund that to the taxpayers. And I provided that to Stefan, and Stefan, there's no risk of that occurring. Is that correct?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Well, and one more thing on that, just for my own edification, has the town in the past debruced? Does anyone in the town on the town board know whether the town has taken action to de-Bruce, basically allowing the town, asking the voters to allow the town to keep sums in excess of revenues estimated without further voter approval.
You know, I think it was 2013.
Okay.
I did that.
Okay, well, thank you for that. We'll track down documentation so that
We have
so
that.
that I have it.
Yeah, we have the Bruce.
Thank you for the.
Perfect.
But you can see, again, this capital improvement plan for the admin department. PD, now, there are some requests in here, capital requests that were contemplated, are on this agenda for purchasing yet this year. Still would like to keep them in because there's a good chance that the PD may have merit-based increases for salaries next year based on different evaluations that are completed. And so still keeping those expenditures within the police department will go a long way to helping with those increases. You can see again, their expenses, their capital outlay is really small. And this is normal for a PD or any sort of public safety to have personnel expenses outweigh just about every other expense in the department. Again, their capital improvement plan. And I know that in the first iteration of the capital improvement plan, I didn't have this, but since we were able to find the glitch, I had to reopen, extend the deadline so that Matt could actually hit the submit button again. And, but it all came through and just came in just fine. And this is the actual budget for law enforcement for the Paonia PD.
I'm not there yet, but I just wanted to point out that the $2,000 for carpet should probably go under the building improvements, the second to the last. 104271.
73.
Yeah.
Yes.
Wouldn't that need to go there as opposed to in the machinery and equipment?
So yes, and that's an easy transfer that I can make after the budget's passed. But it's something that we can just transfer.
Thank you.
Building department, so I did get some positive news the other day about our letter of intent that we submitted last week for our local capacity planning grant. It sounds like we're going to be invited now to apply. They liked our proposal, or at least what was in that letter of intent. So there is a good chance that we will be funded for not only software, but to hire an employee within the planning department. So.
I have a question on the mission statement for the building department. I was curious about how much the building inspector does with zoning. The second sentence gives them a lot of authority, which I don't think has been the case.
So this mission statement was written as if I put on my planning hat and the zoning questions come to me. So instead of the admin department, I have to take off my administrator's cap and put on the planning and building cap to look at zoning. That's why that's in there.
Thank you.
Yeah. Again, this is the actual budget for the building department. We're over the match requirement if we got the grant, so that was good too. This is the first of the public works department. So this is what I've broken down as calling the streets division, where we have 2 full-time non-exempt and then 1 full-time exempt. This is where we're adding an additional employee for next year. This will be considered their home department, even though they'll be broken up over all of the divisions of public works, but streets will be their home department. This is also where we're budgeting for sidewalk repairs and construction, the 5th and Grand realignment project, and then a roller for street repairs instead of our plate compactor. So I'm sure they'll like that a lot, and a work truck. Capital outlay is huge here. It's $1.2 million. That's based on what we're receiving from CDOT and then what we've budgeted in the general fund as our match. We were a little bit heavy in budgeting for our match than what was required by CDOT. Reason for that is there's some unknowns that we may run into that have to be considered as well. So. Capital improvement plan. So once I hit like go live, that capital improvement plan will be on the ClearGov portal and it will be available for everybody to see. So outside of this budget, you'll also be able to follow the project once we hit start project. And so any invoices that we get, we can keep updating that as well. Small roller, portable welder generator that's being split up. Sorry.
No. I remember a couple meetings ago, we had a conversation around generators and kind of the need for that. Did any of that conversation make it into this year's budget?
It hasn't, and so, but it hasn't been forgotten.
Okay.
So with, it also looks like the BRIC grant program through FEMA, the county isn't planning on submitting. However, we were given the information in a webinar that we can attend to apply ourselves. And so I do have that on my calendar as well. The problem is it's really hard as just an individual municipality to get a FEMA BRIC grant. It typically has to be a collaboration of multiple jurisdictions. So my understanding was funds are being diverted to like the jail remodel or the new jail and things like that. There's some projects that took priority. I did attend their hazard mitigation plan or meeting this afternoon with the commissioners and the county emergency management office. I think they're getting ready to really move forward with some of their projects.
Which will help us.
I think so.
Be part of an emergency plan.
It will help us with making sure that our watershed is protected from like PFAS. So just kind of important. Sidewalk design and repair. Again, we're budgeting for it. We're going to do it this upcoming year, and it's going towards that fifth and Grand Ring. There are fleet vehicles planned, and so in this capital improvement plan, obviously it's a 5-year contemplated plan. So Public Works is putting in the request now, not just for fiscal year 24, but for consideration in 25 to start changing out their fleet. I would suspect that Chief will do the same thing in upcoming budgets. It's something we've talked about. We've talked about cycling through the GMC Envoys, whatever they are, and getting a true police cruiser. And again, this is the actual budget for the street division. Parks and Recreation Division. The good news is we haven't used any of our conservation trust fund. The bad news is it won't be released until our fiscal year 22 audit is done. But we are planning to utilize that funds in fiscal year 24 to do bathroom renovations and then carrying over grant funding. We did get the go-ahead. The mayor submitted an email and got the go-ahead from Colorado Grant to carry over any unused funds into next year to do bathroom renovations at Town Park. And we're not talking little renovations. We're talking putting in actual toilet partitions instead of curtains, and then putting in a real door, exterior door. So there'll be significant improvements to the park facilities. It is. I will say we did get pictures yesterday. So for the DCI of people using the skate park, it is used. So I was really shocked. That was a really good project to get done this year. And thanks to the Pool Park and Rec Division, our district for getting that done and taking that off of my shoulders and plate. Because it is used not just by little kids, high school kids, but there's adults out there. I think we even have an employee that goes out there and hits the skate park. So it's pretty incredible to see that it is utilized by our community pretty heavily. And they're all shocked to hear that Tony Hawk's Foundation contributed $25,000 to it. That's pretty good. And then this is the actual, proposed budget for the Parks Division. This is our enterprise funds. And so this is where the significant capital improvement plans are located for water. We got a lot. So this is where we're going to do phase one. We're talking about that 2 million gallon landboard facility, finished water storage tank, relining it. Approximately 9,000 linear feet of steel pipe replacement. And just to put this in perspective, today, there was a repair on that pipe out at the clock plant. Above the clock plant. So it seems like it's a continual issue that needs to be replaced. And, you know, some of this pipe actually goes through private property. At one point goes through a driveway. And so what we're doing is we're considering realigning it. We have directed our engineers to realign it so it follows public rights of ways and stays as best as we can out of private property. Because every time we tear up this driveway, we have to fix it. It's always breaking. So anyway, again, today we fixed the steel pipe that we're going to try to get fixed next year. We have the hydrogeological study, that's a capital request, the generator welder cost share, outfitting trucks with appropriate tools. I think our water trucks are missing.
We just have some things that are shared amongst multiple, so if somebody finds a break, then you gotta find who has what truck is the tools.
So we're outfitting these trucks with tools that they're gonna need at a water break, so that we're not going back and forth trying to find who has what tools.
You guys have been good at keeping the tools intact and where they need to be. It's just which truck did they end up in after the break, you know?
Right. And then this was number 6 was a critical requirement from Corey. We need replacement parts for our treatment plant. I guess there was an emergency earlier this year where we couldn't get a part, but Glenwood Springs had the part and they were able to provide it for us. Well, those kinds of parts that we know, have wear and tear and are more likely to break down. We're gonna buy it and put them on a shelf so we have something in case that emergency happens. And so that's part of that planning ahead for some of our issues. The breakdown by department, $9.4 million worth of expenses. And so when you look at that, again, this is kind of unheard of for a municipality, that personnel costs are far shadowed by our capital outlays. But we're looking at, close to $7.8 million worth of capital outlay next year. One of the requests that we have that's going to be necessary for not only mapping our existing system, but working towards getting good data for our hydrogeological study, our Esri add-ons. This is our ArcGIS software. And so, there was a request that was put into the county to share this license. Cannot do that. So we had already budgeted for it. It's coming. We're just going to get it. Public notice funds. So this is one of the things Corey had asked for like our water quality reports and things that go out. That we should fund that line item. That's so I didn't forget it. Now I'm reiterating, like I'm just repeating myself because we've already talked about that. But you can see, like, for each part of phase one, all of the expected capital improvements that we're going to do in a description. And again, this will go on ClearGov. Once we start the project, hit that button and you'll be able to follow along where we're at with that project. Raw water metering, 8-inch steel pipe, and then spare parts. Okay, so this is our actual water utility revenue. I did add, so this is the only revenue that I've actually added some caveats to. The asterisks by 603601 and 02 for water charges and water charges usage said revenue is dependent upon utility rate increases. And so now that's why the agenda was structured in a way to have rate increases, and then the budget. And then the final is that budget revenues differ from the 20-year cash flow analysis, but budget is in whole numbers, cash flow is to the penny. So that's why if you're trying to match them up, that's why they're going to be disparate. All of the expenses are listed out, what we're anticipating to spend in the water department, including that net income, and not loss, but that net income of $916,000. That's going to go a long way towards future DWRF flows. So for phases 2 and phase 3, you've got to have all of this extra revenue to be able to qualify for them, so that the loaning agency knows that you have the means and abilities to repay that loan should you not get principal loan. So, and again, that meets that 1 to 1.1 ratio that we're trying to maintain.
Could you repeat which number you were referring to just now?
That very bottom number, the net income or loss of the water utility.
What page are we on?
Oh, I'm sorry, you're at 86.
Oh, 267 of the packet, right? Sorry. Yeah.
Oh, I'm on the actual budget. Yeah, 267.
Yeah. And so so the 916 is what you were just talking about? Okay, thank you.
The Public Works Department, wastewater utility division, no changes here for personnel. They do have some capital requests. Again, that's that jetback trailer to help with maintenance and cleaning our system. I've done my best to make graphs to help understand where things are at. That 0% is the depreciation. And I'm really hoping that with increasing our utility rate, that we'll be able to budget more for depreciation, put something away for future repairs down the road. This is the actual revenue that we're anticipating to receive, and then the expenses based on personnel, operating, and then capital outlay. We anticipate like the wastewater breaking even. It would be really nice if it saw, a little bit more revenue to, surplus of revenue, but we're anticipating that it will break even. Sanitation department. So this is a fund that actually does pretty well, and we're able to put more surplus away towards repairs or anything to do with the truck. And I think this year they've also bought new tires for the truck as well. So that expense probably won't happen next year, but we'll anticipate it in 25. This is the actual budget for the sanitation or solid waste division. And we're looking at being able to put away $57,800 for depreciation. That would, even though it looks like we're coming in at no net gain, that $57,000 in depreciation is for future repairs and maintenance to our.
Is there allowance for community cleanup?
I did have it in there. So there is it contemplates $7,000 for it. Thank you. Okay.
And we'll talk more about that. Cleanup day, or cleanup whatever. We'll talk more about how that will go.
It'll be a vote. When we get to that next year, yes.
Yes. I'll remain open-minded.
Thank you. Okay, so this is something you haven't seen yet, and it's something that I'm on this advisory committee and I forgot to put it in, but it's in there. And it's already been submitted to the county as well. They're already working with us, with their engineer for budgeting and finalizing plans to do improvements at the North Fork Valley Airport. And so we received this revenue from a pass-through for a cell tower that's out there. It is not the SBA lease that has been before the board a number of times. This is a separate cell tower that, to my knowledge, has nothing on it. They just pay rent for it, which is great for us, I guess. But we received 75% of that revenue passed through from the county. The county retains 25% of it and puts it towards a capital improvement plan. And we, by the town's ordinance and past agreements are also to keep that 75% of revenue to put towards capital improvement plan for the North Fork Valley Airport. That's what this revenue is contemplated from. It is part of the general fund, but it's considered restricted funds specifically for the airport. It's not an unrestricted surplus. And so what we're going to do is budget for $52,500 for those renovations at the airport based on the funds that we have. And I did go back and look at previous audits to make sure that this was accounted for and that we actually have that sitting in a restricted fund. We do. And so one of the questions that came up is, hey, it looks like we're going to get more airport revenue, and what are we going to do with that extra? Well, it's budgeted in the capital outlay in case there's overruns for the project. We don't know what the cost is going to be yet, but anything that isn't used goes back into that restricted fund for the airport. So it's not like it just goes away or we can now use it to go buy something for the park. It has to stay for the airport. So that's new, and that's what you haven't seen in previous drafts. Okay, the actual capital improvement. So that ends like the budget, and then the capital improvement plan. I don't, from what I've seen in previous budgets, I don't think it's been broken out this way. It kind of looked like a spreadsheet, but this one contemplates like how we're paying for the capital improvement plan, what funds we're going to use for the capital improvement plan, and you can see that broken down here. Our biggest funding mechanism for capital improvements is that drinking water, what I call state revolving fund, but that drinking water revolving fund is making up 75% of all of the revenue for capital improvements. Significant. So it was a really big deal to get that project needs assessment in to finish that 20-year cash flow. And so that represented a lot of work from not just town staff, the mayor, but also from our consulting engineers. So a lot of work being done to put that plan together. Capital costs by departments, and this is for all years. So this isn't just for fiscal year 24. This is for or Public Works is planning on buying a truck in 25, or asking for it. It's contemplated for all years. You can see that the water fund makes up a lot of those expenses. 86% of our capital improvement plan is anticipated to be the water fund. This is an outline of, or a spreadsheet of all of the projects that we're looking at and the costs associated with those projects. And it's by fund. So this top one is water fund. Then it's Parks and Recreation, Streets Department, Public Works, and it goes down from there. Let me see if I can. And then, of course, the water fund and water utility. Okay, this one is actually by department. So the first one was by fund, I'm sorry. The second one is by department, which departments are actually going to have these capital improvements. And then I also included a plan presented by SGM. This was our asset inventory and capital improvement plan. This was completed in September of 2021, but it went through and Payzer rated all of our streets. That's the University of Wisconsin acronym for how you look at a street, and that's POW, and then rate it based on 1 to 10. So it's all very visual, but it works. It really is a great way to prioritize projects, but it really is looking at it, go, hey, that's POW. So this has our asset inventory, our capital improvement plan, and it's 40 pages of our existing facilities. So that's town hall, town shop, our parks, and then our treatment facilities. And what work needs to be done in those for those structures, and then also prioritizing some of those projects like our street repairs. So I included that as well because I think it's something that could easily have gotten lost and collected dust, but it's something that I've used and department heads have used to help prioritize our projects for this upcoming budget and for future budgets. So I think it deserves a spot with the budget.
There's a lot of work on that.
Correct. And so, that's really it.
Is it questions?
That's it.
No, 25 pages.
Yeah, so it's all the actual data collected from that, by block. So they actually Paisley rated and did sidewalks by block. So they went down Grand and went through every block and they look at potholes and spider cracking. So.
It was really helpful when I did the safe pathways for Paonia.
Of course.
And it was really helpful when we were doing the water grants and all of that to go through, this is the very helpful. So any other questions for Stefan or department heads while we're here from the board?
I just want to say this is incredible, and just to you, Administrator Wynn, to the staff, like this is really something. It's so clear. I think, as we have to be good stewards of our town's money, and this is just so transparent and clear and really forward-looking. So congratulations. It's hard for me to believe you've only been here since July. It still kind of blows my mind, so thank you.
Ditto.
Okay, the next portion of this is public comment. Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Just one thing, those of you who, from the public who have sat through our previous budget sessions from years past can remember how excruciating it was. And how, like, getting answers was like pulling teeth. And it was work session after work session after work session where we were leaving more confused than when we walked in. I just have to say, this is just a huge improvement process. Thank you.
Yes, Trustee
And I'd like to say, this being my 5th annual budget that I've done for the town, this has been a joy compared to the other years. We're not having to go through the budget line by line at every work session every time. And we have had just 1-2 work sessions with the budget, 2 work sessions. And before, we were having a work session a week and sometimes 2 a week. Thank you, and thank you, all of you, for cooperation with this. It's made it much, much more pleasant. Department heads really helped out.
Thank you.
All right, now I'm gonna.
5-minute break?
Well, no, we need to open it up for public comment. So, yes.
I'll start. It's nice to see that people are doing their job, that's for sure. Just
Name,
a
address,
reminder.
always
Yeah, I know,
name,
I know.
address.
Just a reminder, during all those years of the total confusion and the total lies and the total nobody working, nobody doing anything, and you all and other trustees were supporting it through all those work sessions and everything else, and in spite of people coming all the time and pointing it out to you. And what did we get as townspeople? Criticism and insults. We didn't know anything, and we're just picking on people. And those people were fucking, stealing equipment, materials, money, whatever. You're looking like you're angry here at me, Mary, but I lived through this the last 3 years. It was hell here. Coming to meetings and speaking up and getting looked at like we didn't know what we were talking about. And then things continued on as the same way. So there's a couple of things I resent about this packet. And I know Stefan is trying to do it right, and I appreciate that. But there's a couple of things, and I can't remember exactly what page or what it was on, but it was the diagram of the town and how it functions with the people on the top. And the description, because there's a little asterisk with townspeople, right? There's a little asterisk, and you say what? You remember what you said? The power of the townspeople is critical, but it's limited. No, it's not limited. It starts and ends with the townspeople. And there'd be a whole lot more people involved if they felt that there was some welcoming here in the town meetings and at the town. You'd get a whole lot more help, even voluntary help of people coming to make things run smoother. Take a little bit of the stress off or the cost off of things. The other thing that I'd like to comment on is the comment of the political strife to something that's working. Well, there was a reason for the political strife. Lots of good reasons for the political strife. And if we're going to be, if the public now is going to be corrected on bringing that political strife, well, I own it. Because nobody else, none of y'all, hardly any of y'all, not everybody, but most of them, and thank goodness, thank God they are gone. Yeah, I know my time is up, but I hardly get any time to talk here. And that's another thing. Okay, now that things are working, we can take off the timer too, because that's an insult.
Other comments from the public? Yes.
I'd just like to say that you all are going to get a huge windfall of more property taxes when our property taxes go up because of the higher valuation. And I think you should be lowering the mill levy. I don't know why you're so worried about money. You're going to have this huge influx of property taxes increases. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else want to make a comment? Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to close the hearing. And so we can have a motion, please, unless we want more discussion. Okay. Would someone like to make a motion to accept the setting of the mill levy for 2024 and adopting the fiscal year 2024 budget? Way back. Way back.
Let's see, where is it?
Maybe.
So I'd like to move to approve ordinance.
Resolution.
No. Okay. I'm the wrong one then.
It's consideration.
There isn't a staff report.
Oh, well then you're taken off of the
agenda.
Yeah.
I'd like to make a motion for approval of resolution 19/2023, resolution setting the mill levy for 2024 and adopting the fiscal year 2024 budget.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that motion passes. Would someone like to make a motion?
I'd like to move for a 5-minute break.
Yes. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Hey.
All right,
You can't just bring it up.
we're gonna be back here at 8:47. Almost 9:00.
Who seconded the recess motion?
Pardon?
Who seconded?
Oh.
I don't know.
I don't think anybody did.
No, seconded.
I didn't.
So the next one is raised.
I'm skiing.
All right, we are back. We are addressing item number 8, consideration of approval of ordinance 06/2023 traffic codes. Ms. Federman, you're gonna be laryngitis by the end.
So this is an ordinance coming back after months. And then a discussion where changes were requested. I made those changes and I've updated the map. I've actually added some, I wish you could see it better, but I've added some streets like hang on.
Please, people in the audience, thank you.
So I've added like Paonia over here, Crest Haven, so that you can see Crest Haven over that way, and then Cedar as well up top. So Cedar was missing, that has been added as well. And then Colorado has been added. And, oh, I'm sorry, Crest Haven is down here, Crest Haven and Meadowbrook up there. So I've added all of those to the map. I added Lee's into the 15-mile-an-hour zone. And then also Hawks Haven, I thought it was kind of important to show the little chute that goes off to Hawks Haven. Actually, that was a request from our the last time this ordinance has been seen. We did add some language. One of the requests was that we added language for like off-road vehicles. And so that language has been added to each one of these subsections. It reads pretty standard. All off-road vehicles, ORVs, all-terrain vehicles, ATVs, utility terrain vehicles or UTVs, off-highway vehicles, OHV, and similar vehicles must also follow provisions of this code. So it should be also easy to enforce as well, and it kind of covers if somebody wants to say, well, I got an ATV, it's not an OHV. Well, actually, it's covered now. So we try to be all-inclusive of these alternative vehicles. Traffic control signage. So one of the things that came up in a public comment early on was the speed limit. And so the road that was actually in question is being reduced or proposed to being reduced to 20 miles an hour. And this also has with it a consideration in the budget for signage to go along with this, because we will have to replace signs, changing yield signs to stop signs and things like that. So that is also included. I want to say we did do some parking restrictions. So there were requests for parking restrictions like at First Street, there should be no parking on the north side of First Street between Grand Avenue and Arnarga. That was something in the last draft that was missed. It's been added. Also Clark Avenue, there shall be no parking on the west side of Clark Avenue, north of 3rd Street along the 300 block from 3rd Street to the dead end of Clark Avenue. So that has been added as well. So I took all of the things that were requested and they have been added. So that's what's before you.
All right, comments from the public? Okay, seeing none.
Yeah, okay, I have a question, and maybe this is for Matt. Are we gonna become like Hotchkiss, where you just know when you go through Hotchkiss, you're gonna get pulled over if you're speeding? Is that, like, do we see, have we budgeted for marked increase in speeding tickets? Yeah, that's my question. I don't want us to become like how Hotchkiss is very.
Yeah, so what we're planning on doing is it'll kind of be a graduated enforcement as far as fines and penalties go. We'll introduce this, and there'll be a window of time where we're conducting traffic stops but educating our drivers. These are the changes that are made. This is kind of what our plan is moving forward. That'll probably roll through all of January, at least 30 days. And then after that, much as I've done with other things, there'll be officer discretion involved. It won't be an absolute. I grant them that power, and that's kind of how they, I like to let them use their discretion. Particularly, we've discussed in the past, if we have people who aren't familiar with the area. You noticed in our budget, we've addressed some tree trimming issues. So if our signs are being covered, we're gonna try and address those as we put new signage up, but just to make sure we're being fair and everybody understands what we're trying to accomplish. The goal here is not simply to generate revenue.
Okay.
It's to actually make the streets safer. That was our goal in talking with the community, having those discussions. That was really their goal. That's what they wanted. It wasn't necessarily, we just want more enforcement. Everybody's kind of goal is, we want it to be safer to be on the streets, on the sidewalks, ride bikes, drive. It's kind of all encompassing.
Through the mayor, if I may.
Yeah.
So, trustee Swartz, one of the things that you would ask for was a communication period and so we're planning to do that as well. Once this is done, we'll also put out, hey, these are the changes that are happening. And then obviously, one of the big changes is signage. So you've heard, hey, we're lacking in speed limit signs. Quite honestly, if you have an iPhone and you use Siri for directions, it says that 3rd Street is 35, even past Samuel Way Bridge. And so they typically update their maps as speed limit signs are put in. And so in ordinances are changed. So with this, it should be able to change that. And hopefully that, people going down 3rd will slow down. Even though the speed limit is 25, they're still working.
Questions? So I have a question. When do we expect all the new signs to be installed?
First thought.
Next month?
I'm assuming they're gonna take at least 3 or 4 weeks to get when we order them, so. I don't think it'll take Public Works long to put them all up and install new ones where needed, but, yeah, the ordering them is kind of the timeline. There's a hold up. My guys will jump on it as soon as we have them able to. And that should be something that winter shouldn't affect too much,
Okay.
I'm doing some bolts and putting new ones in. So.
Well, I'm thinking more about new signs, for example, stop signs and new speed limit signs and things like that.
Those ones might be more challenging, but they'll still be able to get them.
Okay. And we'll work hand in hand with Public Works. Obviously, our intention is not going to be to side drivers. If the ground's too frozen for us to get a speed limit sign in, we will citing drivers for exceeding that speed limit. So we'll be working with them, and as he said, we'll be pushing this information out via town website, our Facebook page.
And to me, my priority would probably be the parks and school areas. That's where we'd probably focus first, and then the other areas.
Okay, thank you. All right. There's nothing else. Can we get a motion, please?
I move to approve ordinance 2023-06, the revision to the traffic schedule.
We have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that motion passes. All right, next, consideration of approval of resolution 21-2023 municipal fines, fees, and forfeitures.
Okay. So this was something that was started clear this past summer by our interim town administrator. And we've picked that up, and I have tried to move forward with some different fee schedule changes. So what we're recommending, and I actually put in the agenda packet, so what you see on the right side of the screen are the list of changes for different fines and fees. So some of them are like for renting this room, requiring deposits for cleaning and things like that. If you're going to rent it, park rental fees, increasing all fees by $50, but still putting into the schedule, like if there's a multi-day event that has its own recycling, they get a credit for that as well. So those things are all baked into this fee schedule. And the changes continue on the left, on that left side of the screen. for like fines and fees as well. I don't believe that we changed anything within actual fines for like police actions, because those would require ordinance changes. Things that could be changed by resolution are contemplated in here. What are some of the biggest changes? Man, this clicker does not want to work. Oh, darn it. Okay, so this is our fee structure. And so when preparing this exhibit for this resolution, I wanted something that could easily be added into MuniCode. It could easily be added to our website, can be a quick reference for staff that have to figure out what these fees could be. And so that's how the approach that I took with putting these down. So they're broken up. There's administrative fees and there's fines and forfeitures. But within administrative fees, we've got it broken down by rentals, administrative services. And so those are things like special meeting fees. If somebody wants to have a special meeting or a special meeting is required that isn't brought on by board action, but somebody else wanting it, there's a fee for that. But I don't believe there was a change to that fee. It was just something that I wanted to put into a nice schedule. But those are the kinds of things that are in administrative services. You can't really see it, but the second to the last one on the left side is the annual dog tag fees. So there's actually a credit if you purchase your dog tag in December instead of waiting till January. You get a discount rate. I didn't know that, and so it was nice to, I wanted to make sure that all of that ordinance was put into a fee schedule so that it was quick reference. There's a higher charge for dogs that are not spayed or neutered, or pets that are not spayed or neutered, which, obviously we needed to know. So that's been included as well. VIN inspection. So this is just their standard VIN inspection is included in administrative fees. That's $10. Matt's going to be proposing, the chief's going to be proposing an ordinance next year for like a certified VIN. Is that what it is?
Certified VINs.
Which has a different fee structure. But because it's an ordinance, it's not included in this fine and fee structure. We also have broken it out for liquor licenses. There's an entire section of our code all about liquor licenses, and so making a schedule for those actual fees will make it easier for us to figure out which fees need to be charged when. And then marijuana licenses. So there's a lot for marijuana licenses just to even get different types of applications submitted. And so that's also contemplated in this schedule. I broke it up as well. There are some things that are like public works services. So there's like a street cut fee, an alley cut fee, excavation permit, and then snow and ice removal fine. I put that in under public works services because even though that fine is issued by the PD, it's going to be the public works guys with snow shovel, taking care of or remediating that snow and ice. So that's added under public works services. Planning and zoning, there were some changes made, and I added some things, namely the pre-application meetings. So that's like the first hour of pre-application meetings are free, and then it's $80 per hour after that first hour. That's kind of somewhat like a Cora request. This is somebody that's going to come in and wants to talk about maybe a zoning variance or something. Taking my time to do something like that. Again, that first hour free, but if we start getting into something that's more labor intensive for this is a pre-application meeting they haven't even filled out an application yet, there would be a charge for that service. Zoning verification letters, you've heard me gripe multiple times about the amount of time it takes to research some of our zoning issues for properties in town, and that many other communities actually have a charge and don't not have a charge. So that's included in here as well. And not just zoning verification letter, but going a step further to a complex zoning verification letter. That's something where, it might come from a property appraiser, who's doing an appraisal for a piece of property that's being purchased, and they're trying to dig deeper into what is an acceptable use. And those typically lead to, hey, can I buy this for an investment property for short-term rental? That's what these have typically been. And so there would be a fee for providing that letter. Administrative reviews, so these are, there's provisions of our land use and planning code that require administrative reviews. That's, we've got staff, but my time to actually review something before it even goes, is contemplated for like an agenda for the ZBAA, the Planning Commission. And so there would be a fee for that. Zoning variance application, that's if somebody wants to do something, vary from the code based on, for zoning, that fee's $500. And the reason for that is, and I think that's actually still in the code, that wasn't an increase. But the reason for that is if you're going to vary from the zoning code, you ought to have a really good reason and be willing to, go through the motions for that, including putting some money towards it. Let's see. I mean, they're all broken out for planning. That's the majority of a lot of our changes are within our fee schedule. Then the final for planning, zoning, and land use is building. Like for building permits, I can't get this to turn. There we go. Oops, building permits. And so building permits, when these fees are calculated, it's been unclear to me. I don't know how they're being calculated in some cases when these are coming. So this is necessary, that at least this very portion is necessary for us to understand how a building permit ought to be calculated and give some direction towards how a building permit needs to be calculated. And it's not just like for plan reviews, but then also for this bottom part down here that says building permit valuations. So this is from the 2021 ICC IRC. And even though our building code is that 2018 code, the 2021 can be set by resolution. And so the most updated building valuation schedule is the 2021 IRC ICC. And so we can set these by our code by resolution, and that's why I've included that in this fee schedule. So that somebody understands if the value of their work is going to be $500, your building permit fee is going to be $24. And so we can go, this will help us when making that final fee for a building permit. Okay, the next page are fines and forfeitures. And so the chief and Joanne really put this together. I just put it in a nice little, kind of graph thing. But they did all the research to say, hey, look, Paonia Municipal Code, Section 7210, nuisance prohibited, says it's a $150 fine. I did have to ask his officers what the heck sum meant, because SUM was on all of our fines and forfeitures. It meant summons to municipal court. And so there's a lot of things in our code that are contemplated by a summons to court. And so those were also included in the schedule. The reason that I put it into this kind of an exhibit is so that when we do contemplate, or if we have to contemplate new fees, fines, and forfeitures, it's really easy to add them. So that whoever does it can just add a column, call it a day. So that's what this contemplates. So I wanted to take the time to really put this together, and I think if passed, it will significantly help us understand what charges need to be, or how to charge for things. So there's one more page. Another one. Okay, nope, go back. There we go. Okay, so that's the last one. It looks like Nick is jumping.
Thanks, Stefan. Mayor, if I may,
Yes, please.
I just wanted to clarify that when it does say summons in the municipal court, the municipal judge has the fining authority to issue a fine up to $2,650 in accordance with the town's general penalty clause. So while it says summons to municipal court, there is still a fine associated with that and a limit to that fine.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
It's already in by ordinance.
Okay.
But it's,
It's difficult when you read through the way it's written, it'll say refer back to general penalty assessment. So then you're constantly scrolling all the way back up to come back in and find it. And the other thing we're working on here, one of the goals was actually to simplify this a little bit for the community so that they're not, if we have an issue or something, we're not consistently writing them a summons to come see the judge. But we have other means where we can explain to them or write them a letter, and it's graduated, so we can work with them as opposed to, this is an issue, you gotta go talk to the judge. That's what we're trying to get away from, is a lot of this confusion, this back and forth.
Yeah, the reason I wondered what Nick just said is that $2,600 up to $2,600 true of every time somebody goes in front of the judge, or is that just with a certain of the ordinance?
It will depend. She has that ability, but it would be per charge. So if they're charged with 3 different things, it could go up to that amount for each charge.
The reason I was asking is I didn't know if it'd be helpful to put an asterisk next to municipal summons court, but it sounds like it's not something that is consistent with every one of these entries with municipal court.
if I might ask, it's up to the judge's discretion?
Absolutely. Okay. So it's not set. She doesn't go to the max every time. There'll be other factors involved based on the officer's report, or what it costs, or what would it cost to fix this issue, or it's public works involved, like on the snow, and there's other things involved. But we'll have to document that. She doesn't just max it out every time. And we're trying to get away from, standing that person up in front of the judge every time, where just like this situation, you don't really know. We'd like to make it much more laid out.
The reason I brought it up is I didn't know if there was a way to make that clear to people when they're reading this, but it sounds like that's unnecessary. If they're going to court, they better bring their checkbook.
Right.
Maybe. Because there may be a fine. There may be a fine, but there's no way to put in here, in this list, what they could expect to pay. It's too.
Right, absolutely.
That's
for the judge, yeah.
Yeah, Nick looks like he wants to say something.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Mayor. And in response to Trustee Smith's comments, what will typically happen is one of Matt's officers will issue a citation, and it will list an amount that they can pay in most circumstances, and those are the listed fines that you see in the schedule. But sometimes that citation will just say summons, and that will mean that the judge will assess the penalty right there if the judge convicts the violator, and that can be up to that $2,650 amount. But what you'll often see is, like, somebody will receive a citation, let's say, for example, for speeding, and it lists the amount of the fine there. They refuse to pay that and appeal to the municipal court. They go in, and by virtue of their appeal and refusal to pay the fine, and they may or may not have a legitimate appeal, but if they end up getting convicted there in municipal court, then the judge still has the discretion to go over and beyond that fine that they initially would have had to have paid. And part of that is exactly what Matt just said. It has to do with covering court costs and covering other town incurred costs, but it's also intended to allow the judge to consider mitigating and aggregating factors. Sometimes they'll go below what the prosecutor has recommended. So lots of discretion for the judge. And, when it comes to courts and imposing penalties, it's, it gets into all of those ideologies about deterrence and retribution and things like that, recidivism. So all of that is really baked into the municipal court process. But the fines are really pretty straightforward at the outset, but they can get they can get increased or decreased if the case actually goes to trial.
That's something you can easily put in a table. That's my point. So, yeah.
You'll see next year as we move forward with, we present some new ordinances to you. We very much would like that structure right in there. That are fine, summons. That way it's clear right there and there's not this unknown.
This is good though, too. This is pretty clear. Thank you.
Anything else?
Pro Tem had a question. Well, one thing caught my eye.
Oh.
We're really missing a lot of revenue here.
Oh,
There's a $500 fine for frequenting establishments which serve alcohol. And so I was trying to think, how many citizens do we have? It's a $500 fine. Why are they worried about money?
The word here is discretion.
But there's no age limit on it, there's no, yeah, it doesn't say anything about being inebriated.
I'm sure there's a lot of background. Yeah.
It's kind of hilarious.
Yeah.
Okay, on page 1 under administrative services, where it has public records request, I'm just curious because it has $33.58 per hour, blah, blah, blah. The attorney fee to review for privileged information is $33.58 per hour. Is that next time? Is there a way we could?
It's set by Cora,
Oh,
so that is the maximum that can be charged. Yeah. That's why we try to keep things from Nick, and he's just reviewing them. He's just reviewing them. Yeah.
Then the second thing I want to say is, as a person whose home is powered by solar, I really appreciate the flat fee and not this convoluted thing that was there previously.
Oh, yeah, so that was, thank you for bringing that up. That was something that was included. And that's an actual addition, was the flat fee for solar panels. And then you still have to go to the state for the electrician stuff for charging it. So.
That's 2 questions. First one was, when I saw community room at the very top, I thought of the Sally Hansen Center. You mean here?
This is for this room.
So I don't understand. How do I rent the Sally Hansen Center? Should that be on Ellen Hansen? Should that be in here?
I'll have to bring that back to a different meeting because I'm still trying to understand.
Okay. And what was my second question? Okay, sorry. I'm getting tired. In the building permit fee, does that include hours? You know, there's been some controversy about people having to estimate when they're doing the work themselves, how much labor, and that is still included in those range of money.
The total valuation, correct.
Includes labor. Okay, just checking.
And it'd be retail, so if you got a discount on things, does that matter, or is it just retail valuation?
The value of the project.
Okay. Anything else?
Well, I think now that we mentioned building valuations, I actually want to thank previous Mayor Pro Tem, Mr. Markle, for bringing starting this whole process, right? And months ago, looking at all of these fees and starting to codify all of this came from one of his questions. And so, though it may not have been his attention, this is actually going to help us out a lot. And it all started from a question about valuations. So I want to kind of acknowledge that. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Did we give public comment on this?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay, I'm going to open this up to public comment.
Christina Patterson, Price Road. Paige or Trustee Smith. I was just gonna say, to rent that Sally Hansen, the teen center, you have to go to Dependable, into the back room, find Michelle, and that's how you do it. But we paid for everything?
I can't.
Why are we, anyway, never mind.
So I can answer that one really simply. We have looked for some sort of an agreement between the people that are, who are running that program and the town. We haven't been able to find one. And so that's something that is on our plates for 2024 that we'll work on. That's why it's not contemplated here. Right. It's not ready yet.
Also on our bathrooms, main breakers and that.
Oh.
Okay. Aw, we're not having it for Thursday though, so.
All right, any further discussion? All right, can we get a motion, please?
I'll make a motion that we approve resolution 21-2023 municipal fines, fees and forfeitures.
Now a second.
Second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that motion passes. All right, we're moving on to item 10, consideration of approval of staff recommendations for selection of RFQ 2023. What? Oh, yes.
I know you want to move on to this, but I just wanted to point out the time. This might be a discussion. I don't know if you guys wanted to extend.
Yes, we do need to extend the meeting time. Good choice, Sam.
Madam Mayor,
Oh, no, that was
I'd make a motion that we extend the meeting time until 10 o'clock.
You have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that motion passes. All right, now we're going to move on to item 10. Consideration of approval of staff recommendation for selection of RFQ 2023-04 for the hydrogeological spec. Mr. Wayne.
So an RFQ was submitted. It went up for, say about 30 days. We did see, we put it up on BidNet. There was 45 different firms that downloaded our RFQ and 4 that did submit by that deadline. We did open those bids at a public hearing or a public meeting on last Thursday at, was it 4 p.m.?
Yeah.
4 p.m. We recorded that, so it should be up on the website soon. Listed off those that we received proposals from and the total cost. We took those under advisement for scoring. We did the scoring based on what was in that RFQ. And, the chart over to the right are those raw scores. SW stands for me, CH is Corey, JE is Jason, SV is Sam. And so the 4 firms that did present a proposal are HRS, Intera, Wright Water Engineering, and SGM. And so those scores are available for you on right here on the screen.
Thank you. Public comment? Okay, seeing none. Questions, comments from the board? Trustee, please.
This was really difficult, and I've seen this kind of scoring situation being used when you're hiring people. And there's such a tiny difference in the final score here of what we're doing. The firms are well qualified and have a lot they can bring to the table. So we're really fortunate in having the bidders that we had. So it wasn't an easy decision, I know. One thing that I don't like, I want to call it incestuousness, but SGM has done practically everything for us. And in a way, seeing SGM doing so much work, in a way, I'd like a second opinion. Kind of like having a physical. And Wright Water Engineers has such a stellar reputation in the state. I just didn't see, I don't know. Those are some of the thoughts that are running through my mind, that it may be a really good practice for the town to have a new set of eyes look at this. And they're not new per se. They know the Western Slope. They have a lot of projects that are similar to this, but they haven't worked hand in glove with us. And in a way, I think that's a good thing. So, the scores were just so close. That's one of the things that came to me.
Other members of the board? Yes. Just McGinnis.
There was one thing. Okay, so reading Wright Water and SGM's proposals, it seemed to me that Brightwater is going to be using a lot more data that they generate from a number of sources to inform what they're doing versus SGM is going to be using a lot of data that's already present. I think Brightwater mentioned a number of different ways that they're going to survey the geological area that they're modeling. And so I think the model that they would provide us is going to have kind of a different level of detail than SGM, but there's one piece of SGM's proposal that stood out to me, and I'm trying to find it again. Yeah, so the last bullet on task 6, SGM also plans to identify local, state, and federal permitting actions that may be necessary to implement the strategies on phase 2. And so what I think what we are getting with SGM is not kind of an isolated study, but them setting us up for the next phase of our kind of larger project. And so while I do agree with Dave or Mayor Pro Tem Knudsen that we have given SGM a lot of work, and I would prefer to have our eggs in multiple baskets. I don't know that the hydrological study is the one to create more diversity with, if that makes sense. I think we might get a more detailed model from WWE, but SGM I think is actually going to set us up to be successful in kind of successive phases of our larger kind of water project. That makes, yeah. So those are my sense.
To the mayor, if I can, so.
Yeah.
We've got, what this is a request for qualifications, right? So we're looking at the qualifications of the firms that are presented. And I mean, you can see the scores. I had Brightwater as my number one choice. I think that they were pretty high, but the average score was SGM. If selected, whichever firm the board chooses to select tonight, based on the scoring or however you choose, I think Nick might even have some things, but remember that we're looking at this for qualifications. And then when it comes to like a contract, we can work out the details of a contract with whomever is chosen. So if there are things that we would prefer to see, we can ask for those things. And so if there's data that that all firms need, we can provide that data. I mean, we shouldn't be holding on to something from consultants, whether we have a contract with them now or we're going to get into a contract in the future. But again, that's it.
So I know, I liked SGM's approach to data collection, especially using the piezometers, as opposed to drilling wells, because you can put a lot more in, you get a lot more information on groundwater movement. So, I agree with the staff that SGM, I think, is proposing the better approach to understanding what's going on up there.
Well, I have an opinion. So the whole intent in writing this grant and from the very beginning was to look subsurface, because we have tons of data on where the groundwater is flowing down and all of that. And we have that data. What we don't have is the subsurface data. We don't have where the fracture lines are. I mean, Interra did a wonderful job of laying out the basic geology on the side of the mountain. And that's what the intent of this grant was, is to look underground. And in the proposals, both Interra and Brightwater gave us ways to look underground for that data. So when I saw the 4 proposals, it's like, I'm frustrated because we can't get the data we want from all firms. Only 2 firms can provide that data.
And to me, that's what you just said, is that that the contract then will specify data collection methods.
So that's with, with an RFQ, you're looking at qualifications, right? So you're looking at if the firm is qualified. And then once you've selected based on those qualifications, then it moves to that contract phase where you say, these are what we're specifically looking for. If we had done a request for proposal, I've typically done those on an RFP for like construction projects where we have an engineer who designed some drawings, and that's what's going out to bid. Give us your means and methods to put this project together. We're looking at qualifications for these firms. And so they are really close. And I want to say that going through every one of these proposals, even HRS, they called me earlier this week to let me know that they have some personnel staffing. And so that's why some things might not have been as complete as they wanted. But they're all very qualified firms, and we scored them as those qualifications came in. But my understanding, and Nick can correct me if I'm wrong, but if we select somebody based on qualifications, we can work into what we're looking for into a contract.
And here's my worry is that who we have chosen does not have the capability to fulfill what we need from this grant. And in truth, the only reason we got this grant is because we were told from the outset that the Gunnison Basin Roundtable, who we had to, that was our first hurdle. If we couldn't get them to agree to this, we could not go to the CWCB for the rest of the money. That they do not fund studies. And it was only because they were convinced that we were going to look at something that it had not been done before. And that was the subsurface study. That was the only way we got this money. And now to say that we're going to look at surface water, that goes against the basic intent of this grant. So my suggestion is that we just take back the whole thing and put out another proposal so that, all right, or I'm trying to find the right words.
Mayor, if I can, so
yeah.
In the RFQ, we gave ourselves specific provisions that we could reject all proposals and go back out for, I guess, a competitive bid process.
Right.
We have that option, and it would be after the first of the year. Before we did anything like that. But again, I want to reiterate that we're looking at qualifications, and we have really good firms that have given a proposal to us. And the only concern that I have is if we were to do that, we may not get as good of a response down the road, but we still might get some of these guys to resubmit. So
I would say, let's reject all proposals. Let's put it out again and specifically ask for surface and subsurface analyses in these proposals so that we do get what we need to fulfill this grant and to get us the information we want. Trustee Knut.
2 of the 4 already submitted that. I'm really concerned about the amount of delay we're going to have if we go ahead and reject all proposals. I'm very comfortable. Actually, I'm even comfortable with what the staff's first choice, going back to them and saying, this is the part you guys missed. I want to see you put this in. One thing that would be helpful for me is I would like to hear from trustees who haven't spoken to this, and I'd like each individual staff member who has reviewed this to just give me their take on it. That would help me get a better perspective on it.
Okay, well.
I'll speak up. What I see is subsurface is more of what we need to look at. We have a pretty good handle on what happens on the surface. Brightwater did a surface water analysis some years before I was on the council before. It's in the files. They also did a plan for raw water storage. And basically they told us that we're not gonna be able to do it. Raw water storage is not gonna happen on that mountain. basically because of the geology. And also the BLM will not allow us to build a dam up above there. That's the way it's going to be. So we need to know about subsurface conditions and where our water travels. And we have two firms that have the capability of doing that. And that's what we ask for qualifications. And I think that they adequately came up with their qualifications, and we should go ahead and make a decision now. At the very least, we're talking February before we can make another decision. And they're going to have to mobilize. They're going to have to get up here. There's a lot of paperwork to be done before they actually get on the ground. And I'm not real comfortable with the amount of field expenditures that both of those firms have. But I think we can work that out in the contract. And I think that's probably the way it should go.
Yeah, this one, I'm newer to this, so it's taken a lot for me to just kind of get my head wrapped around it. But what struck me was how close the scores were and the fact that Wrightwater gave us without asking what we were looking for. They kind of understand what it is we need. Maybe not. I see the eye over there. But if they're saying, okay, we can do more of the measurement of the subsurface water, like I'm inclined, I don't want to go back to SGM and say we need these things. I want them to already kind of know what we're looking for. But yeah, I'm a little torn, and I really want to rely on staff on this one.
All right.
Do you want me to go over my scores, then we'll go down the line?
Each staff.
Yeah.
We have
Yeah, all staff
all
members
the
who rated are
evaluators
here.
that were here. I'd like to hear from each one.
Yeah. And so, do you mind if I take? Go ahead. There you guys go. Your scores are right there. So what was in the packet, and I apologize, they were fillable forms. And so everybody sent me fillable forms. And when I clicked print to save as PDF, it just took Corey's and then duplicated it for everyone's. And that's not that's what I gave you in an email that I responded to one of the consultants with the actual scores. Those were the actual scores. And so I can go over my how I came up with the scores that I gave. HRS, while they did provide most of the requirements of the RFQ, they were missing phases 2 and 3. And so that was a significant issue for me. I made note of it. And so I also reduced the amount of points I gave them for cost, because they only contemplated one cost, and that one cost was for phase 1. Now, they did say, hey, phases 2 and 3 are going to be dependent on what we find in phase 1, and then we'll give a cost later. And I needed to see that, right? I needed to see their approach. Interra had a very, very good proposal, and so was really impressed. And I think a lot, I won't talk for them, but so for me, I was impressed to see that there were co-project managers. So if we couldn't get a hold of the person that was going to be in charge of the project, there was still somebody else who could make decisions and continue with that project. They had, and the most impressive thing about Interra was the army of water attorneys, water rights attorneys that they have in their back pocket. And I think that would have been really, really good, down the road, right? And be really good. So I scored them, I dinged them on a few things for like the Western Slope and their approach to where we are on the Western Slope. And and for the projects that they had in their proposal. And we do have one of their engineers watching. So, but again, pretty impressive proposal. Wrightwater was my highest scored. I really liked that that one of their project managers had significant experience with CWCB. That's the group that funded the majority of this project. And I think that could come in very useful down the road. Their cost, they were number 2 in cost. And so they lost some points for that. But overall, they were 90 out of 100. So that was my score for them. I did like their approach. I thought they were very qualified, and they did have a lot of publications. So They had a lot of peer-reviewed publications, so it wasn't just, we're putting out a newspaper article, these were actually peer-reviewed by other doctors. So I thought that was pretty impressive. SGM, they were my number 2, and I scored them 96 out of 100. I thought that their approach was good. I know that we're looking at subsurface, and you brought up the piezometers, and I think, it doesn't go 300 foot down like Brightwater had proposed for that low frequency ground penetrating 300 feet, kind of Navy technology. Pretty impressive. I don't know, I've never seen that approach before. I don't know anything about it. But SGM's approach with looking at, with drilling some wells, they were proposing well drilling as well, also putting piezometers in. I thought we could get some subsurface information from them. Again, we were looking at qualifications though, and so means and methods wasn't something that was really contemplated, because in a contract, I felt like we could go after it. But those were my scores. And again, we had really good firms that presented to us, and I thought I was really happy with actually getting 4. And typically you see like 3, and that's what the number you strive for, because then you always have like a high and a low in that middle, and you can contemplate them better. In this case, we had a 3 that were really close, and then an outlier, right? So because half the proposal I felt like wasn't done right. And so having all of those was really neat. And having 4 people respond shows that we're being looked at. And in a good way, it's a good way that we're being looked at and being considered. So.
All right, let's go ahead. Go for it.
I kind of struggled with this one. I found all 4 of them, I think, would do fine on the project, and I think no matter who we chose, we would be the ones that come out ahead. To study, I think all the companies were more than capable of completing. I had 2 scored pretty much as a tie, and Interra probably would have been right up there with Brightwater and SGM. And they done work in the town before, I gave higher points based off that, but their scores came in, for me at least, really close on all 3 of them. I think the only D on Interra for me was they haven't done work specifically here. They have Western Slope experience, but the other 2 have experience here, so it's really hard for me to not give them more points for working right here. I still really don't have a favorite. It's kind of, I would be pleased to work with any one of them on this. I think they're all more than capable. So.
All right, Jason.
So I'm a lot with what he said. I had my highest score was Interra. I thought they were very good, a lot of knowledge, big firm. All of them I feel could definitely do the job. I had SGM second. I really liked Interra though. HRS was all right, so was what Staffen said, just not enough info, just phase 1. That's about it. If it was me, I'd do Interra or SGM.
Sam.
So I had to approach this a little bit differently because I don't know as much about the water stuff as everybody else does.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I said I had to approach mine a little bit differently because I don't have a lot of the knowledge of our water system that everybody else does. So I think that's where some of my scores different or from other people. But my top choice was Interra. They tied with SGM. So I mean they were both right there. One of the things that really did impress me about SGM though is that even though they have done so much work for us and have so much knowledge of us, they didn't do like this straight path to this is what we're gonna do, this is how, they still left some openness for finding new information, for trying new things. And I mean, I agree with Corey, any of these firms are great. I was actually when HRS's ended the way it did, because I was really liking their proposal as well when I first read it. But what it came down to the most for Intera with me is, because if we've learned anything this year, it's how we get monkey wrenches thrown into things. And I thought Intera had the best laid out plan for, if something happens here, this is where we're gonna go. This is what, and to me, I was just like, man, they've got that. So we're not gonna have to stop and wait for somebody to get back from vacation or an emergency, or if a decision needs to be made right now on the ground, somebody's gonna be available for it. And then at SGM actually taught me stuff with their proposal. So I just really liked how easy it was to read it and understand how it applied to us. So I know that they've done a lot of work with us, and we've talked about that, but in this case, I don't know that that's necessarily a bad thing. So the two of them tied for different reasons on me there, but I liked the fact that they didn't just cruise through everything. They didn't fall into the "we know you too well" rut, and that's pretty impressive when you have somebody who's done quite a bit of work with you. And honestly, out of all of them, they're the only firm I actually had heard of. So I didn't have any basis for the other ones either. So I didn't have that influence. I haven't worked with any of them. I haven't even really had much of a relationship even with our SGM guys. So the proposal was good though.
And I should say, we scored these independently, so that's why you got the scores late. I took them home and had to go through all the proposals. And Corey was home, and Jason actually did it on his day off from home. Sam was the only one who got it done in the office. So, but we scored these independently. So very close in scoring, and I think what Corey said was, we could work with anybody. So we're just, we know we got to get the study done.
I truly believe any of them could get the job done. I truly do.
I agree. I think any of them could get the job done, but can all of them give us the data that we really need? That's the question. So this is our 30th issue of the night.
Mm-hmm.
Is there more information, like what I'm hearing, we're all over the map here. Is there more information that we could get to help inform the decision? Perhaps from other folks who other folks who've worked with them, or what could help sway us from this fence that we're on?
Yeah, so what could happen, right? So you could reject all proposals. You could go with a recommendation. We did leave in an RFQ the ability to interview. I did say that we don't anticipate interviewing any firms, but it's an option. Nick, I don't know if it's too late to interview or not, but we could call them in for interviews as well. So
yeah, I would say that it is not necessarily, there's a tentative schedule in the RFQ for key dates, but it's clear in the language that it is a tentative schedule. Tonight, you'll see listed on the proposal calendar the anticipated town board decision. Key word there is anticipated. There's nothing that precludes you from requesting additional information from these firms. And I think if you were to do that interview or by way of written questions, prompting written responses, either one would work. To keep the process fair to everyone, you'd want to ensure that you were asking the same questions. So if you did interview them, I would suggest doing so with a list of prepared questions and trying to stick to them as best as possible, with prompting some follow-up that seems necessary. And with that said, given that we're trying for uniformity here out of fairness to these qualified proposals, it might be best to do written question and answer. That way everybody has the same ability to respond to the exact same question. So but I'll just conclude by saying that it would be, there's nothing in this RFQ that precludes the board in the town from asking additional questions and taking those responses into consideration and bumping the tentative schedule.
I would certainly, oh, I'm sorry. Go
Well, I
ahead.
was just, three things came to mind when Nick was speaking and reading through this. First, I think it was one of these said, please call our references. Were any references called for any of them? Which is really, Dave and I have done that for other things. It's a really good thing to do, have to ask the same questions. And has anybody talked to Crawford since SGM went up there and worked on their single spring?
I haven't
Recently, I think it'd be really good to find out about that. And it was interesting for me to see that Crawford's no longer in our scope. What's going on over there? The other thing that, one question I wanted to ask is, everyone is saying we will meter the springs. We will get this information when there's meters on the springs. When are the meters gonna get on the springs? How can they meet this deadline when we don't have meters on the springs?
Yeah, it's all predicated on.
But the meters, we can't do that till next year. So here's I think we have a little bit of a Gordonian knot, if that's what it's called, because we have put this very prescriptive schedule, and a lot of the information they need to get to the end of the schedule, they won't have available to them. I don't know, August? When do you think the meters can get on the springs? And do we need,
As soon as we get SWRF or the DWRF funding.
So have we put the cart before the horse here? No, and is there a reason we're rushing this? Do we have to spend the grant money for this study in a certain amount of time?
I believe it has to be within fiscal year 24, and then we can ask for an extension.
Oh, right. And there are 2 meters that are part of this grant, so they can go in the summertime.
Right, but we have four different spring sets we're trying to meter.
Right.
Some of these folks are getting that. They understand the springs and the basins that they need to look at. Others are not seeing that. So I don't think we're being reasonable in our expectation of this schedule. How could they possibly, and can they get spring meter information for 2 weeks? And that's enough to fill in the gap? Or do we?
I don't think it's gonna be enough for the whole, like, the sooner we can get the meters in and running, the better it will be through all phases, because we'll continue to gain data from those meters, you know, it's, so I think that was kind of the push to get them up there, get it going, get at least 2 of the meters in, and then we're at least getting good data on 2 of the meters sooner rather than later.
And we already have German Springs, right? The springs going into Lamborn. We have pretty good information on them, but we don't have it
Just what's coming into the plant. We don't have great data on what's coming out of the spring.
each individual spring.
Yeah.
Can we get a postponement for a year on this?
There's 3 different granting agencies because DOLA fell off. So we'd have to ask.
Yeah.
And do you see what my consternation is? There's a huge piece of information we are not going to have available to them, and you can't do a geophysical.
Well, you can't. I mean, some of this can be done.
It can, but we can't ask for it by the end of
Well,
October.
the very end of the thing, the monitoring program is what needs the meters. But the geophysical stuff can be done up there. I mean, they can go up there and do the piezometers or the underground stuff and do the drilling and setting all that stuff. They can do that whole thing. All of that stuff can be done before the meters are installed.
But each of these are saying, we will install the meters. They are not, they don't seem to understand that we are going to install meters, the way I read these. Did you all get that impression? They make it sound like they're gonna do metering.
Yeah.
According to this, we had a requirement of 2 meters being installed, according to the contract. And basically, the meters are not gonna do a whole lot of good. We need 3 to 5 years of data before it's actually even something we can contemplate using. But the underground stuff needs to be done, and we have the money.
And we have and we can order the meters, so they can install the meters. I mean, that's not an issue. Because we have the 2 meters. This is part of the whole grant, is the 2 meters we have to install. Okay.
We aren't engineers.
No, we're not.
And the reality is, we also have some spill data that can be augmented that helps them look at stuff. So what I don't want to do is delay all this stuff. Yes. I'd really like to make a decision. I don't want to kick the can down the road. We've got 3 qualified firms. I'd really like to see us choose one and getting on with this, because I think it's really important that all of us need to know what's our capacity. And a big part of our capacity is what's happening underground there. And so I'd really like to see us make a decision tonight.
I think to getting in, as soon as we can after the spring runoff, we'll get some of our highest flow data sooner rather than have to wait till 2025 to have any spring flow data from our higher runoff times.
And we might have a really good kick-ass drought. So we can find out what's happening next fall.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the only reason I want one.
Right.
You know, that could be.
If I might, to me, if we want to add the next step of asking questions of these firms to get the answers, I think a question regarding the meters and their understanding of the meters and where they were going to put, and because I'm not seeing them saying where the meters are going.
Right.
It's all been very general. And I think it would be good to know if they understand about the meters having to be installed and how integral is that meter data to them feeling like they can give a report by the end of October.
Okay, and that's a good question. And I think we should ask some questions. I think we should ask them, what is their capacity to do a subsurface investigation on water flows on the mountain?
And the meter question.
And then the meter question, and then do it in writing, give them a deadline to come back. And then we can make a decision, you know, reevaluate it and make a decision the first meeting in January, which is not, they can't get up to the top of the mountain to do any of this stuff until at least the first meeting.
They want to do, you know, background, they want to.
But they can do that, and yeah, we can, January is a 3-week delay, so that's all.
So that I'm clear. It looks like there's a few things we're gonna do. One, we're gonna call references, right?
Right.
And so you'll get a staff report on references. We'll ask, as part of that references, I'll ask Crawford about, you know, what one of the firms has done for them. I will also ask additional questions and get responses. I'll work with Corey and James at Respec to make those questions, so that we have good information coming back from them. And then we'll look at, one of the questions is regarding the meters, and if they understand when they would be installed and how integral is receiving that data to meeting that deadline in October. So that's one of those main questions. And then, and then we'll work with James on.
Can I just, do we, are these, is the contractor going to determine which springs are getting the meters? There are 4 springs identified for meters. So, or do you know which meters, which springs are going to get them?
Meter the 2 that we're currently using the most, which is Yeah, Big German Creek and.
We've got 3 minutes.
Oh geez, we got extended.
So Reynolds and German.
So, and I would suggest you let them know that the 2 meters are going on those 2 springs.
Yeah.
So they can focus their geotechnical.
Okay, so we need to extend the meeting.
I'd like to make a motion to extend the meeting 30 minutes.
All right, you got a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
This is it.
Okay.
I have another, just to follow up on a question that Paige had, and I know that you all in respect will come up with questions, but how long, like, this is a big decision for our town, and yes, I know you want to get it done, but I want us to be prudent and have the right amount of data. How many years of data do we need, given these changing conditions and droughts and everything? That would be a question that I would be really interested in.
And Respect has given us a number, and I think didn't they say 4 years?
I
think it was
yeah. That's when you start getting a good balance of what you should have yearly, 1 year is not gonna tell you how much it's gonna be. Just dependent on that year, but then obviously the more years you add, the better average you get, so.
Right.
Clock is started. Do we have a clock starting?
Yes,
Any
we've
meters?
already, they've been collecting inflow data for at least 18 months.
Yeah, almost 2 years.
From
Almost
which
2 years.
springs?
No, inflows into the plant.
Then, yeah,
Oh, just-
what we
okay,
have.
not at the spring box, at the-
What
Thank you.
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, and what we can do with multiple years of data, we can also correlate the weather data.
Right.
And that's what we really need. We need 4 years minimum. I'd like to see 10, but we're not gonna get 10. That's good data, but 4 years ought to get us a data that we can make a decent decision, an informed decision. Right now, we have no data at all, and that's our
We've got almost 2 years of data.
all of flow data.
Yeah.
And nobody's correlated it to the weather
No, yeah,
conditions,
because
and that's
we're
something that
collecting.
has to be done, so.
So,
Okay.
and to add to this discussion, and I'll make it brief. Our guys through Mark Roeder have noticed have found a leak within our raw water collections. And so we know that we've got water loss from raw water. And that might affect some of our inflow data.
Isn't our pipe running through the trees?
Oh, it's so awful.
It's not the one in the tree.
It's not that one.
Steep hillside, thick oak brush.
Oh, no.
It's gonna be a good one.
So I think we've got a path forward, and I don't know, Nick, on any recommendations on like a motion would be really helpful. But I think that what we're looking at is calling references and asking additional questions to, do we want to go to all 4 respondents or just the top 3?
I don't know. What do you think, Nick?
I think that so my response is based on the language of the RFQ itself, and I think that there's sufficient language here where the board can select those who will be issued and are expected to respond to the board's additional questions. So it doesn't require necessarily that you do all 4. If you're already precluding one of the firms based on their submission to date. If you think that, if the board ultimately thinks that responses to the questions from the one that it might already exclude might sway a decision toward that firm, you might include them. There certainly doesn't seem like it would harm the board in doing so. But if the board decides that that's there's no way you're going to go towards that other firm, then you might as well preclude them now.
Thanks, Nick. So Michael just send it to the 3. Okay.
Take a stab at a motion.
All right.
I'd like to make a motion that the top three recommended firms be taken through a process determining, taken through a process of follow-up questions and background checks.
Okay, you have a second?
Can I make an amendment?
Yes.
Can I just add to that, with staff, like that we would make the decision at the first January council meeting?
Okay.
I don't, that way at least we have a timeline.
I'll second that.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, we have a motion.
All right.
All right.
Actually, made a decent decision after 9:30.
That remains to be seen.
All right.
Appreciate your skepticism.
4 more to go, guys. 4 more to go. All right. Item 11, consideration of approval of the contract between the town and Matt Laminger, Paonia Car Wash.
So there couldn't be any thought of influence on this contract. Matt has stepped out. But I think you guys have seen the draft language. Nick prepared it, and I think it meets every condition that you were looking for. Nick, do you have anything else to add? Sorry, I took your thunder.
No worries at all, Stefan, and I appreciate it. The only thing I'd add here is that this was intended to fulfill the conditions that on which the board approved the arrangement and continued contract with the car wash now that it's under a town of Paonia employees ownership. And because of that, what I did was I added a clause. It's in paragraph 7 that states, if at any time the circumstances giving rise to the board's findings and decisions pursuant to that citation as to the Colorado Ethics Code, change in any material respect, then the board and the car wash have to convene during an open meeting and must reconsider whether it's lawful, ethical, and appropriate for the town and the car wash to continue the contractual relationship. So that's basically expressing the parties' continued commitment to act ethically. And I think that's important here because the board has agreed to really bless the continued contractual relationship due to the fact that there's really no other contractor that can reasonably provide the services. So that's why that's included in here, and that gives the board something to point to potentially bring this back in the future if the circumstances do change.
All right. Public comment? Okay. Or discussion? You want to make a motion?
I'd like to move to approve the proposed contract between the town of Paonia and Matt Laminger.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that motion passes. All right, moving on to, do you want to go get Sam or Matt?
I texted it.
Oh.
Sam's here.
No.
Just wasn't paying attention.
I hear break, guys. Okay, consideration of approval to enhance oh my God. That word, safety, through the purchase of 5 bulletproof vests. All right. Yeah, now tell us about your 5 bulletproof vests.
Yeah, so we're looking to buy new bulletproof vests. Part of this comes because previously what they would do is when we would hire, or when an employee would leave the department, they would retain his equipment. It's pretty standard. But when we'd hire a new employee, we would reissue that equipment to them. Sometimes work, they're similar size, but what we're in a situation now is 2 of our officers are wearing vests that are expired. 2 of the vests will expire in the next 12 months. We have 4 different brands of vests that are currently issued. They don't all match uniform styles, and they don't match a policy requirement in that we require our vests to be protective against the same things we're carrying on us, because we're introducing those into every conflict. So what we're requesting here is the purchase of new vests from Safe Life Defense, which is one of the companies that we already have a vest from. They're handgun rated, rifle rated, shotgun, stab, taser. So, and since we already have one, they'll be uniform compliant. And along those same lines, we're also asking to waive the 3 vendor quote requirement, since this one company is who produces this vest. We would like to buy from them again, so that they're all the same. And as far as funding goes, we'll be using funds that we have this year as well, but already appropriated expenditures.
Comments from the public? All right, board?
What's the life of a vest?
Typically 5 years.
Can I just ask again? So if as officers leave, they're gonna leave the vest here. So you really have kind of a rolling issue that if somebody leaves that wore a small and the new person comes in as an XL,
Can I answer that for you?
you have to buy another.
So I would rather buy another one. I'd rather appropriate budget for that, because they get really smelly and you can't clean them. And so, you know, and it's a hygiene thing as well. Sorry, Matt.
Oh, yes, yeah, and that's actually one of our,
I wouldn't know that.
assertion requirement now is that, we actually train on best maintenance and care. Like, you take them out of the carriers, we wipe them down. But, yeah, the other part of this is that, really in the name of officer safety, we should be budgeting and taking care of our money appropriately. That we would buy that officer a vest when he came on. We would measure him and make sure he got what he needed.
Anything else? All right, can we get a motion?
Make a motion that we approve the buying of the 5 safety vests.
Okay, second?
And waive the 3 vendor quote requirement?
Yes.
And that.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Oh, did we get a second?
Oh, no.
No.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that motion passes. Next, consideration of approval to purchase Motorola Spillman Flex Mobile Suite software.
Yeah, so we've discussed this previously, but this software is something that we use as part of our computer-aided dispatch system. 3 of the agencies in the county have already gone to it, including the Delta County Sheriff's Department, who also manages and runs dispatch. What this software allows us to do is the officers are going to be able to run people on scene in their in-car computers. We'll be able to query the database if we need for driver status warrants, things like that, protection orders that are granted, as opposed to getting on the radio, which is what we do right now. For every request we make right now is via the radio. So we ask for driver status, license plates, all those things. The radio gets very congested. It can take a while. And so we would like to bring the software on board, help officer efficiency a little bit, and kind of help the public in the sense that we're gonna be able to get this information a lot faster. So like we were discussing earlier with new speed limits, if we were to pull somebody over and we were educating them on the speed limits, the officer could go back to the car. We'll check driver status to make sure they're okay, registration's good to go. Yeah, here's your warning, these are the new speed limits, and they're on their way, as opposed to running them, airing all that information on the radio, waiting for those returns. The other part here is when we're on scene and we're running individuals and we're asking dispatch when they run that to attach that person or attach that information to the call. The officer now, traditionally, he comes all the way back to the police department where he logs into his computer to retrieve that information to now put it in the report. Whereas we'll have that information on scene with our in-car computers that will be available to us. And again, we're looking to use funds that we have this year to purchase this software. And then the other, its quote's been attached, but they've also extended a discount to us if we're able to move that into this year or make that for the next year.
It is a significant discount, so.
Okay, questions, comments, Tammy? Okay, anything from the board? All right. Yes.
I mean, this might be just kind of a no-brainer question, but the physical equipment that we have, both in computers and vehicles, will be able to support the software and kind of the tasks that we're gonna be asking for it to do. I know kind of the equipment inside the car, that in each individual car is not necessarily standard in how it operates. So I'm just curious about like, you know, in all of our police cars, is this going to be fully effective in all of them, or is there going to be kind of,
Partially, it'll be sporadic in the sense that this software will be able to run on. I'm being told the software will be able to run on most of the laptops we have now. Now, once we start implementing this software, that could change depending on how the computer's gonna react or what the load is on the computer. The other part of this is that our cars are not all set up with docks and bases to put these laptops in. So a lot of times the officers are taking their laptops with them in the car, and then, you know, if we're on scene and they want to get started on a report, they'll get their laptop out and start that document and work. Part of that is a cost issue in that I don't think it's good value and good use of taxpayer dollars to be buying a bunch of equipment from the cars if the plan is to possibly phase those patrol vehicles out down the road. The other equally important issue is that to get equipment to fit in the cars we have now, which are not traditional patrol cars, is very expensive. So, you know, those are things we'd look at in the future. But the newer laptops that we have now should be able to run this equipment, should be able to run this software. We're trying to get it set up where each officer will only have a laptop, and that will come in and out of his car with him. So instead of coming back to his desktop, he'll just bring his laptop with him, he'll put it in his dock, and he'll work from it. That way we're not, from an IT standpoint, we don't have laptops in the cars and desktops. We're trying to link all this together and make it all work. They'll have their workload.
Mayor, if I may, so I've implemented Spillman in one other community for public safety, and it is an incredible software. Not just on this, the laptops, but there's also an app that comes with Spillman Flex where an officer can actually see he's on scene by pushing a button. So, and yes, self-dispatch, it's pretty incredible software, and at this price, it's far less than what we paid in Albion, so.
All right. Okay. Nothing else from the board. Can we get a motion?
I make a motion to enhance, in an effort to enhance officer efficiency.
Okay.
Delivery the community staff.
No.
Oh, sorry. I would like to make a motion to approve the purchase of Motorola Spillman Flex Mobile Suite software.
Do I have a second?
Good job, Paige.
Did we have a second anywhere?
No. All in favor?
Okay. All right, people, we're getting slap happy here. One last item.
So
last one. And the reporter is there too. She's so far gone. Oh, geez. Okay.
Do we need this meeting?
All right. Last one.
So this is actually going to be December 26th. And so I'd say, please cancel this meeting. If we have to have a special meeting, let's schedule a special meeting for the audit. But I will be here that week anyway, and for the first week of January, I do have a planned vacation.
Your clerk would.
Yeah.
What did you say? Your clerk would love the break.
So, yes, let's please.
Okay, I'll comment. I'm just kidding.
Yes.
I got nothing better to do. So.
All right.
We all have to hang out with me after Christmas.
Yeah, I would too.
I'd like to make a motion. Be present on the 26th.
He can have a meeting all by himself. All right.
I'll move that we cancel the second regular board meeting in December.
All right. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, that motion carries.
We have two more slides.
Oh.
Mayor and trustee.
All right, I have nothing.
I would just like to say your cookies are bomb. They are so good. Thank you for those. They definitely helped.
Oh, good, all right.
Made the meeting.
Oh.
So I do want to give context to this. That picture on the right's hopefully going to be in the DCI, that my daughter took that. She took really artistic pictures in the skate park. The picture on the left is us hiking 1.25 miles out to get that tree.
And we're dragging in a special award for that. All right, people. We are adjourned.